Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Walter Prescott, and at 67 years old, I thought I'd seen just about everything life could throw at me. I've lived in Cincinnati my whole life, working as a high school science teacher until retirement 3 years ago. My wife Margaret passed last spring, and since then, our modest home has felt more like a mausoleum than a place to live. That's what prompted me to dust off the old Winnebago sitting in our driveway, a relic from happier days when the kids were young and summer meant adventure. I never considered myself the outdoorsy type, not anymore at least. Age has a way of making you cautious, of convincing you that comfort trumps experience. But something about the approaching autumn made me restless. The leaves were just beginning to turn, painting Hocking Hills State Park in hues of amber and crimson according to the weather report. I figured a week alone with nature might clear my head, give me some perspective on what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. The drive from Cincinnati took longer than I remembered, my hands gripping the steering wheel with unnecessary tension. I'd packed enough supplies to last 2 weeks: canned goods, bottled water, extra blankets, my medication, and Margaret's old camera. She would have wanted me to document the trip, to find beauty in something again. What I didn't bring was my cell phone. What good would it do me out there? Who would call? The kids were busy with their own lives in different states, and my friends, well, most of them had either moved to Florida or into assisted living. I arrived at Hocking Hills just as the park office was closing. A young woman with Ranger Davis on her name tag seemed surprised to see someone my age pulling up in a Winnebago. "Almost missed you, sir," she said, checking me in with quick efficiency. "You're at campsite 17. It's one of our more secluded spots. Perfect for stargazing, but we've had some issues with wildlife lately." She handed me a map and a list of rules, her eyes lingering on mine a moment too long. "Make sure to secure your food and trash. We've had some incidents." The way to my campsite wound through dense forest, the road narrowing to little more than a dirt path. I'd forgotten how dark it gets when you're away from city lights. The headlights of my Winnebago carved tunnels through the blackness, illuminating glimpses of trees that seemed to lean inward, watching my progress. By the time I reached campsite 17, my shoulders were aching from tension. It was a small clearing surrounded by towering oaks and maples, with a fire pit and a wooden picnic table. Beyond the clearing, I could make out a steep ravine dropping away into darkness. I parked the Winnebago facing outward, an old habit from when Margaret and I would want the best view with our morning coffee. The engine ticked as it cooled, the sound unnervingly loud in the silence. No cicadas, no distant traffic, just the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. I stepped outside, stretching my stiff legs, and that's when I noticed the odd scratches on the nearby trees. Long, vertical gouges in the bark, too high for a deer, too methodical for storm damage. Something moved in the underbrush beyond my campsite. I froze, straining my eyes to see through the gathering dusk. A flash of something pale disappeared behind a distant tree. Probably just a deer, I told myself, though it hadn't moved like one. I hurried back into the Winnebago, locking the door behind me. I'd set up properly in the morning. That night, I slept fitfully, dreaming of Margaret walking ahead of me on a forest path, always just out of reach, always turning corners before I could catch up. Morning revealed campsite 17 in all its autumn glory. Sunlight filtered through red and gold leaves, painting patterns on the forest floor. I made coffee on the small stove and sat at the picnic table, watching squirrels dart between trees. It felt good to be out here, despite my initial unease. I pulled out the park map to plan my day. There were several hiking trails nearby, and I wanted to visit Old Man's Cave, a spot Margaret and I had loved in our younger years. My first full day at Hocking Hills began with optimism that quickly faded as I ventured onto the trail toward Old Man's Cave. The path started clearly enough, well marked with blue blazes on trees, but about a mile in, I noticed something disturbing. The trail markers suddenly alternated between blue and red, something that wasn't indicated on my map. I stood at a fork, uncertain which way to proceed, when I heard a voice behind me. "You look lost." I turned to find a middle-aged man in a park ranger uniform, his badge reading Chief Ranger Blackwood. He was tall, gaunt-faced, with eyes set too deep in his skull. His uniform looked oddly worn, not like the crisp outfit the young woman at the entrance had worn. "This area is not really for tourists," he continued, gesturing at the fork. "Trail maintenance. You'll want to head back to the main path." Something about his demeanor made me uneasy. The way he stood too still, how his eyes never seemed to blink. "I was hoping to reach Old Man's Cave," I explained, showing him my map. He glanced at it dismissively. "That map's outdated. There's been some changes since the incident last month." When I asked what incident, his face hardened. "Nothing for visitors to worry about. Just follow the blue markers back. Some areas are temporarily restricted." He pointed me toward the way I had come, standing and watching until I began walking. I felt his eyes on my back long after I should have been out of his sight. When I glanced over my shoulder, he was gone, though I hadn't heard him move through the underbrush. Back at my campsite, I studied the map again. There was no indication of closed trails or restricted areas, and when I flipped it over, I saw it had been printed just 2 weeks ago. Something wasn't adding up. That afternoon, I drove the Winnebago to the main park office, hoping to speak with Ranger Davis again and clarify the trail situation. The office was empty except for an elderly man organizing brochures. When I asked about Chief Ranger Blackwood, his bushy eyebrows shot up. "Haven't heard that name in years," he said, shaking his head. "Nathaniel Blackwood retired almost a decade ago, after that mess with the missing hikers. His replacement is Ranger Collins, but he's on leave this month." He must have seen the confusion on my face because he added, "Maybe you met one of our seasonal staff? They sometimes don't wear the standard uniform." I described the man I'd encountered, and the older man's friendly demeanor faltered. "That doesn't sound like any of our current staff," he said slowly. "Where exactly did you say you met him?" When I told him about the trail fork with the mixed blue and red markers, he frowned deeply. "There shouldn't be any red markers on that trail, and we don't have any areas closed for maintenance right now." He pulled out a map identical to mine and circled a spot. "This is where you were." "That's strange. That's very close to where." He trailed off, then seemed to catch himself. "Well, it's probably just some mix-up with the trail maintenance schedule. I'd stick to the main paths if I were you, Mr. Prescott." Back at my campsite, I couldn't shake my growing unease. The shadows seemed longer somehow, the forest quieter than it should be in mid-afternoon. While heating up some soup for dinner, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Fresh scratches on my Winnebago's door, 3 parallel lines dragged through the paint. They weren't deep, but they hadn't been there that morning. I ran my fingers over them, trying to rationalize. Maybe I'd scraped against a branch? But the marks were too deliberate, too evenly spaced. As twilight descended, I decided to document the scratches with Margaret's camera. The flash illuminated something I hadn't noticed before, a muddy boot print beneath my window. Too large to be mine, the tread pattern unfamiliar. Someone had been walking around my vehicle while I was away. I quickly checked that all the doors were locked and windows secured, then pulled the blinds closed. Sleep seemed impossible now, so I sat at the small table with a mug of whiskey-laced coffee, jumping at every creak and rustle outside. Around midnight, a tapping sound started at my rear window, soft at first, then more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Too rhythmic to be a branch in the wind. I froze in my seat, hardly daring to breathe. Then came a new sound, a low, scratchy voice, barely above a whisper. "Open up, Mr. Prescott. Park Service. Need to check your permit." It sounded like Blackwood, but distorted somehow, as if speaking through gravel. I remained silent, heart hammering in my chest. After what seemed like an eternity, the tapping stopped. I heard footsteps circling the Winnebago, then fading into the forest. When dawn finally broke, I was still sitting at the table, empty mug clutched in my trembling hands. The noises had stopped hours ago, but I couldn't bring myself to look outside until daylight filled the clearing. When I finally peered through the blinds, everything appeared normal. No footprints, no mysterious figures lurking at the forest edge. But hanging from my side mirror was a small burlap pouch I'd never seen before, tied with red string. I used a stick to knock it to the ground without touching it. Inside were small animal bones and teeth, arranged in a pattern that made my skin crawl. I decided to pack up and move to a different campsite, somewhere closer to the main area, somewhere with other campers nearby. As I was loading my few belongings back into storage compartments, a Park Service truck pulled up. Ranger Davis stepped out, clipboard in hand, looking surprisingly grim for someone so young. "Mr. Prescott," she said, approaching cautiously. "We've had some unusual reports in this sector. I'm checking on all isolated campers." Her eyes darted to the burlap pouch on the ground, and her professional composure slipped for a moment. "Where did you get that?" she demanded, her voice sharp. When I explained about the night visitor and the strange encounter with Blackwood, the color drained from her face. She snatched up the pouch with a plastic bag, careful not to touch it directly. "You need to relocate immediately," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I can escort you to campsite 4, near the ranger station." As she spoke, she was already scanning the tree line, her hand resting on what I now noticed was a holstered sidearm beneath her jacket. "There's been activity in this area that we're investigating. Nothing conclusive yet, but we're taking precautions." She wouldn't elaborate further, but insisted on following me in her truck as I drove the Winnebago to the new location. Campsite 4 was a relief after the isolation of 17. Here I could see 3 other camping groups, a young family in a tent, a couple with an RV, and some college-aged hikers with backpacks. Ranger Davis helped me get situated, then pulled me aside, speaking in low tones. "Don't tell the other campers about what happened. We don't want to cause panic. But I need you to promise you'll stay in populated areas. No solo hiking, especially not near the area where you met the man claiming to be Blackwood." After she left, I tried to settle in, grateful for the sounds of other people nearby. Children laughing, the college kids playing music, normal sounds that pushed back the dread that had been building since yesterday. I walked over to the RV couple, introducing myself. They were pleasant enough, Tom and Diane from Pennsylvania, in their 50s and on a tour of state parks throughout the Midwest. When I casually mentioned Chief Ranger Blackwood, Tom frowned. "The name sounds familiar actually. Wasn't he involved in that tragedy years back? The Lost Hikers?" Diane nodded slowly. "I remember reading about that. A group of 4 went missing in these woods maybe 12 years ago. They only found 3 of them, and the survivor was not right afterward. Kept talking about a ranger who led them off trail." She shivered. "But that's just old history. This place is perfectly safe now." As evening approached, dark clouds rolled in, bringing an unseasonable chill and the promise of rain. I was setting up my camp stove inside the Winnebago when I heard a commotion outside, raised voices, a child crying. I peered through my window to see the family hurriedly packing up their tent, the father looking agitated as he spoke to Ranger Davis, who had returned. I couldn't hear their conversation clearly, but caught fragments. "Found in their tent. Not safe. Relocating all campers." Within 20 minutes, Ranger Davis was knocking on my door. Her uniform was mud-splattered now, her expression grim. "Mr. Prescott, I need you to come with me to the ranger station. We're moving everyone from this area tonight." When I asked why, she hesitated. "The Henderson family found something disturbing in their tent, similar to what was left on your vehicle. And there have been sightings. Someone unauthorized is in these woods." Thunder rolled overhead as she spoke, perfectly timed to heighten the sense of foreboding. I gathered my essential medications and a change of clothes, locking the Winnebago behind me. As I climbed into Ranger Davis's truck, I noticed the college students arguing with another park employee. They wanted to stay, claiming their campsite was paid through the weekend. Ranger Davis shook her head. "Stubborn idiots," she muttered, starting the engine. "We can't force them to leave, but..." She didn't finish the thought. The drive to the ranger station should have taken 10 minutes according to my map. But as rain began pelting the windshield and night fell completely, I realized we'd been driving far longer. The roads here were unfamiliar, narrower, rougher. When I pointed this out, Ranger Davis kept her eyes fixed on the road. "Detour. Main road's flooded. Almost there." But her white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel told a different story. Suddenly, she slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding on the wet road. In the headlights stood a figure, tall, unnaturally still, wearing what looked like a park ranger uniform. But as the beams illuminated his face, I felt my heart seize. It was Blackwood, but not as I'd seen him before. His skin was gray, almost translucent, eyes reflecting the light like an animal's. And his uniform, what I'd taken for shadows before were actually dark stains spreading across the fabric. "Lock your door," Ranger Davis whispered, reaching for her radio. "Central, this is Davis. He's here. Route 7, about 3 miles east of..." The radio crackled with static, cutting her off. Outside, Blackwood, or whatever was wearing his shape, took a step toward us, mouth stretching into a smile that was far too wide for a human face. Then the headlights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness broken only by lightning flashes. In one such flash, I saw him directly outside my window, those two deep eyes boring into mine, that impossibly wide smile revealing teeth that seemed filed to points. The truck's engine sputtered and died despite Ranger Davis's frantic attempts to restart it. In the erratic lightning flashes, I could see Blackwood circling the vehicle, that unnatural smile still fixed on his face. Ranger Davis pulled her sidearm, her breathing quick and shallow. "We need to make a run for it," she whispered. "There's an emergency shelter about half a mile through those trees. When I say go, we both get out and run. Don't look back, don't stop for anything." My heart nearly exploded at the thought of fleeing into the dark forest, but staying in the dead truck seemed equally suicidal. Rain hammered the roof as Blackwood began dragging his elongated fingernails across the metal, producing a sound like screaming. "Now!" Davis shouted, throwing her door open and firing 2 shots at the figure. I fumbled with my door handle, arthritis-stiffened fingers betraying me in my moment of need. By the time I tumbled out into the mud, Davis was already several yards ahead, flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she ran. I ran as I hadn't run in decades, every joint screaming in protest, rain blinding me as I followed Davis's bobbing light. Behind us came a sound I can only describe as a howl, not animal, not human, but something horrible in between. The forest floor was treacherous with rain-slicked leaves and hidden roots, and my foot caught one such trap, sending me sprawling face-first into the mud. Pain shot through my ankle as I struggled to rise. The flashlight ahead grew more distant. Davis either didn't notice I'd fallen or couldn't afford to wait. Dragging myself to my feet, I limped forward, using trees for support. The rain lessened momentarily, and in that brief respite, I realized I could no longer see Davis's light. Worse, I could hear something moving through the forest behind me, not running, but moving with deliberate, unhurried steps. It knew I was injured. It knew I couldn't escape. Another lightning flash illuminated the woods, and I caught a glimpse of a figure standing between 2 distant trees. Not Blackwood this time, but someone smaller, watching me. Then darkness again. I stumbled onward, directionless now, my only goal to put distance between myself and whatever was pursuing me. My lungs burned, my ankle throbbed, and the rain had soaked through every layer of clothing. Another flash of lightning revealed what looked like a structure ahead, not the emergency shelter Davis had mentioned, but an old fire tower rising above the trees. Shelter, at least, and maybe height would give me some advantage. I changed course, pushing through dense underbrush toward the tower. The metal stairs clanged under my feet as I dragged myself upward, each step in agony with my injured ankle. Halfway up, I heard the distinct sound of the bottom door opening. Someone, or something, was following me up. I forced myself to move faster, panic lending strength to my exhausted muscles. The observation room at the top was small, dusty, abandoned looking. The door had no lock, so I wedged a broken chair under the handle and collapsed against the far wall, gasping for breath. Through small, grimy windows, I could see the storm raging across the forest. Lightning revealed the landscape in strobing snapshots, trees bending in the wind, the distant road where we'd abandoned the truck, and something else that made my blood freeze. Figures, at least a dozen, stood in a loose circle around the base of the tower, all looking upward. Even from this height, I could see they all wore variations of park ranger uniforms, though some were so weathered and stained they were barely recognizable. The chair blocking the door began to vibrate as something pushed against it from the other side. The wood creaked, starting to splinter. I frantically searched the small room for anything I could use as a weapon, finding only an old fire extinguisher and a heavy logbook. I gripped the extinguisher, backing against the windows as the chair gave way and the door slowly swung open. But instead of Blackwood, it was Ranger Davis who stumbled in, soaked and bleeding from a gash on her forehead. "Barricade the door again," she gasped, helping me replace the broken chair and adding the heavy logbook. "They're coming. All of them." Her eyes were wild with terror as she checked her sidearm. "Only 2 bullets remaining." "I've worked here 5 years," she said, voice shaking. There have always been stories about Blackwood and what happened to him and those hikers. Management tells new rangers they're just campfire tales to scare rookies. She laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. They don't tell you he was investigating a cult operating in these woods. They don't tell you that when they found his body, it wasn't really dead. Something heavy slammed against the door, making us both jump. The barricade wouldn't hold for long. Davis's radio suddenly crackled to life, making us jump. Through bursts of static, a voice came through, not the dispatcher, but a man's voice, deep and distorted. "Been waiting for you, Anna Davis. Just like we waited for Blackwood. Just like we've waited for all the curious ones." The radio shouldn't have been working this far from the station, with no ranger repeaters nearby. The pounding against the door grew more insistent, the wood beginning to crack. Davis positioned herself facing the entrance, gun raised. "The real shelter is northeast of here," she told me, voice steadier now. "About 2 miles. There's a radio there, direct line to state police." She pressed her truck keys into my hand. "There's a trapdoor under that rug, maintenance access to the exterior ladder on the south side. When I give the signal, you go. Don't argue." Before I could protest, the door splintered inward. Davis fired both remaining bullets at the first figure that pushed through. Blackwood, his face now barely human, those 2 wide jaws opening to reveal rows of sharpened teeth. The bullets seemed to have little effect. Davis screamed now and charged forward, fire extinguisher in hand, smashing it into Blackwood's face in a cloud of white powder. I tore away the rug, finding the trapdoor just as she described. Rain and wind hit me as I lowered myself onto the exterior ladder, which was slick with rain and rust. Below, those watching figures had begun to move, converging on the tower's base. I had no choice but to descend toward them. From above came sounds of struggle. Davis's scream suddenly cut short. Then silence, more terrible than any noise could have been. The descent down the fire tower's exterior ladder was the longest journey of my life. My hands, slippery with rain and sweat, threatened to lose their grip with every rung. Above me, silence had fallen after Davis's abruptly terminated scream. Below, the figures I'd seen surrounding the tower had vanished, a fact more disturbing than comforting. Where had they gone? Were they waiting in the darkness just beyond the tower's base? When my feet finally touched solid ground, my legs nearly buckled from exhaustion and fear. I oriented myself using the storm. If the wind was coming from the west, as it had been earlier, then northeast would be. I set off at an awkward jog, my injured ankle protesting with every step. The forest seemed to close in around me, branches reaching like grasping hands, roots rising to trip me in the darkness. Twice I thought I heard footsteps paralleling mine, just out of sight beyond the trees. The rain had slowed to a miserable drizzle, and without the drumming downpour, the forest's silence became oppressive. No insects chirping, no nocturnal animals moving through the underbrush, just the sound of my own labored breathing and the occasional distant rumble of thunder. I tried to maintain a straight course, but without stars or landmarks visible, navigation was nearly impossible. After what might have been 20 minutes or 2 hours, I realized with sinking horror that I'd been moving in a wide circle. Ahead stood the fire tower I'd fled, its skeletal silhouette unmistakable against the night sky. A figure stood at its base, not Blackwood or any of the other pseudo-rangers, but Davis. Relief flooded through me until she turned, and lightning illuminated her face. Her eyes were gone, replaced by empty sockets that somehow still seemed to track my movement. Her mouth hung open at an impossible angle, as if her jaw had been deliberately dislocated. When she spoke, the voice wasn't hers but a chorus of whispers. "Walter, you left me. Now you'll stay with us. All the curious ones stay." I ran blindly now, no direction in mind except away. Branches whipped my face, drawing blood that mingled with rain. My lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass, each breath more painful than the last. Age is cruel that way. The mind can summon panic and the will to survive, but the body betrays you, unable to respond as it once could. I stumbled into a small clearing and froze. Surrounding me in a loose circle were ranger uniforms, some so ancient and decayed they were little more than tattered rags on skeletal frames. Their faces were variations on a theme, some with missing features, others with too many, all wrong in ways that defied explanation. In their center stood Blackwood, more corpse than man now that I could see him clearly. "You shouldn't have come to campsite 17, Walter," he said, his voice carrying despite barely moving his distended mouth. "That's where we welcome the curious ones. Where we welcome the hikers who wanted to know our secrets. Where I found the truth before I became the truth." He gestured to the others. "Park Service has such turnover. Rangers come and go. Some stay longer than others." Understanding dawned with nauseating clarity. Each uniform represented a ranger who had investigated too deeply, who had discovered whatever horror lurked in these woods. The Real Davis was likely already among them, another sentry to capture those who strayed too far from the approved paths. And I had driven directly into their territory, a curious old man thinking nature might comfort his grief. My legs finally gave out, and I collapsed to my knees in the mud. "Margaret," I whispered, thinking of my wife, hoping that whatever came next might reunite us. But as Blackwood and his grotesque chorus closed in, I realized my final mistake. My phone, which I'd left behind as unnecessary technology, could have summoned help. The stories I'd dismissed as campfire tales might have warned me. The signs I'd ignored might have saved me. The last thing I saw before they reached me was a beam of light cutting through the trees, a powerful flashlight, followed by shouts. Real rangers, perhaps, or other campers searching for those who'd gone missing in the storm. Blackwood's head snapped toward the interruption, his face contorting with rage. The circle broke as several of the figures melted back into the darkness. Hope surged briefly, until Blackwood turned back to me, his smile returning. "They'll never find you, Walter." "Not really, but perhaps you'll help us find them." His hand, cold and impossibly strong, closed around my wrist. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged. The searching lights grew closer, voices calling names, mine among them. But they were too late. Blackwood and his followers pulled me into the shadows beneath the trees, into places where light couldn't penetrate. The forest folded around us like a closing mouth, and I joined the watchers of Hocking Hills, another curious one who had found truths not meant for the living. Days later, they found my Winnebago at Campsite 4, untouched except for a Park Service citation tucked under the wiper, a fine for abandoned property, signed by Chief Ranger Nathaniel Blackwood. My wallet and identification were still inside. The official report listed me as missing, presumed lost in the unexpectedly violent storm that had caused flash flooding throughout the park. They searched for 3 days before giving up. Sometimes now, I stand at the edge of Campsite 17 as new visitors arrive, their faces bright with expectation, unaware of the watching eyes among the trees. I wear the remnants of what I died in, my ranger's badge a mockery pinned to my chest. I am among the curious ones now, forever part of the forest's dark history, forever watching for others who stray from the path, who ask too many questions, who seek comfort in places where comfort died long ago. And when they come, as they always do, I'll be waiting, another sentinel in a uniform stained with secrets that never should have been uncovered. I'm Everett Langston, 32 years old, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A couple months back, I got this itch to break away from the city grind. You know, the kind where you're choking on exhaust fumes and dodging hipsters with overpriced lattes. So, I decided to head out to Wayne National Forest in Ohio. It's only a few hours' drive, but it feels like a different planet. Wild, quiet, and just what I needed. I've got my old pickup truck, a '98 Ford that's seen better days but still runs like a champ, and I figured I'd sleep in the bed under a tarp. No tent, no fuss, just me and the open air. Packing was a mess. I threw in a cooler with some beers, a sleeping bag, a flashlight, and my granddad's old hunting knife. You know, for that rugged survivalist vibe. I'd been scrolling through some forums online, and folks kept raving about this spot near a lookout tower deep in the forest. Said it was peaceful, with killer views. Sounded perfect. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, though. My sister, Mara, would have nagged me about safety or whatever, and I wasn't in the mood for that. I just wanted to disappear for a weekend. The drive out was smooth enough. I blasted some Springsteen, windows down, letting the wind whip through the cab. By the time I hit Ohio, the sun was dipping low, painting the trees this crazy orange. Wayne National Forest sprawled out ahead, all thick pines and winding dirt roads. I followed this beat-up map I'd printed off. GPS is useless out there, and found the turnoff to the lookout tower. It's this rickety old thing, maybe 50 feet tall, perched on a hill like it's watching the whole damn forest. I pulled up about a quarter mile from the tower, parking under a canopy of branches. The air smelled like pine and damp earth, and it was dead quiet. No traffic, no sirens, just stillness. I climbed into the truck bed, popped a beer, and leaned back against my sleeping bag. The tower loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the fading light. It's funny, I thought it'd feel cozy, but something about it gave me the creeps, like it was staring back at me. Setting up camp didn't take long. I rigged the tarp over the truck bed with some bungee cords, figuring it'd keep the dew off me. I'm no Boy Scout, but I've done this kind of thing before. Nothing fancy, just enough to get by. The plan was simple. Spend 2 nights out here, hike around, maybe climb the tower if I felt brave. I'd read it was still open to the public, though it looked half abandoned from where I sat. Night fell fast. I munched on a sandwich I'd packed, ham and cheese, nothing gourmet, and listened to the forest wake up. Crickets chirped, an owl hooted somewhere far off. It was peaceful, sure, but there's this edge to it, you know? Like the quiet's hiding something. I brushed it off, though. City paranoia, I told myself. I crawled into my sleeping bag, the truck creaking under me, and tried to relax. The stars were unreal out there. No light pollution to mess them up. I stared at him through a gap in the tarp, feeling small but kind of free. Last thing I remember was glancing at the tower again. It's got this little window near the top, and for a split second, I could have sworn I saw a flicker, like a light turning on then off. I blinked and it was gone. Probably my eyes playing tricks, right? I mean, who'd be up there this late? I drifted off eventually, the beer buzzing in my head. It felt good to be out here, away from everything. I didn't know it yet, but that lookout tower wasn't just some rusty relic. It was the start of something horror show level disturbing, and I was parked right in its shadow. Sleeping in the truck's not exactly luxury, but I've had worse, like that time I crashed on my buddy's couch and woke up with his cat chewing my hair. Out here, though, it's just me, the Ford, and whatever's lurking in the dark. I didn't hear anything weird that first night, but I couldn't shake this feeling, like I wasn't as alone as I thought. Morning hit me like a slap. I woke up stiff as hell, my back screaming from the truck bed's unforgiving metal. The tarp had sagged overnight, dumping a puddle of dew right on my face. Great start, huh? I crawled out, stretching, and took a look around. The forest was thick with fog, the kind that makes everything look like a creepy movie set. The lookout tower was barely a smudge in the distance, swallowed up by the haze. I cracked open the cooler. Beer for breakfast sounded tempting, but I settled for a warm energy drink instead. My phone was dead, no signal anyway, so I tossed it back in the cab. That's when I noticed the truck's battery light flickering on the dash. Weird. I'd driven it fine yesterday, but now it wouldn't even turn over. I popped the hood, swearing under my breath, and poked around. Cables looked okay, but I'm no mechanic. Hell, I can barely change a tire without YouTube. I figured I'd deal with it later. Priority 1 was coffee. I'd brought a little camp stove, so I set it up on the tailgate and got some water boiling. The fog was still heavy, muffling everything, and I kept glancing at the tower. Something about it bugged me, like it was closer than it had been last night. I shook it off, blaming the lack of caffeine for my fuzzy head. Halfway through my coffee, I heard this low hum. Not loud, just there, vibrating through the trees. I froze, cup halfway to my mouth, trying to place it. Machinery? A plane? It stopped after a minute, and I laughed it off, probably some farmer's tractor miles away. Still, it left me jittery, like I'd caught a whiff of something scary I couldn't name yet. I decided to hike to the tower. It was the whole reason I'd picked this spot, right? I grabbed my knife, stuffed it in my belt, and started walking. The fog made it slow going. Roots kept tripping me up, and I nearly face-planted twice. By the time I reached the base, my boots were soaked, and I was cussing myself for not bringing a jacket. The tower loomed over me, rusted and peeling, with a rickety ladder bolted to one side. Climbing it seemed like a dumb idea, but I was here, so why not? The rungs groaned under my weight, and I kept picturing them snapping, like in those horror flicks where the guy's halfway up and bam, down he goes. I made it to the top, though heart-pounding. The view was killer, even with the fog, miles of green stretching out. all silent and wild. But the little room up there? Empty, dusty, and creepy as hell. Old papers were scattered around, yellowed and curling. I poked through the junk, mostly Park Service logs from the 80s, nothing exciting. Then I found this scribbled note under a broken chair. Don't stay after dark. No context, just that. I snorted. Real funny, whoever wrote it. But it stuck with me, you know? Like when you hear a ghost story as a kid and can't sleep without checking the closet. Back at the truck, I tried the engine again, still dead. I kicked the tire, frustrated, and weighed my options. I could hike out to the main road, maybe flag someone down, but that'd take hours. Or I could wait it out, hope it was just a fluke. I picked waiting, lazy, sure, but I wasn't ready to ditch my weekend yet. That hum started up again, louder this time, and I caught myself scanning the trees. By afternoon, the fog lifted, but the day stayed gray. I messed around camp, sharpening sticks with my knife. Pointless, but it kept my hands busy. The tower kept pulling my eye, though. I'd swear it looked off. Taller, maybe? I told myself it was the angle, but this nagging feeling wouldn't quit. Something disturbing was brewing out here, and I was too stubborn to see it. Dusk crept in fast, turning the forest into this shadowy mess. I was fiddling with the truck again, smacking the battery like that'd magically fix it, when I heard something snap, like a branch breaking clean in half. I whipped around, knife in hand, but the trees just stared back, dark and still. My heart was thumping, though. No way that was just a deer, not with how deliberate it sounded. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam around. Nothing but pines and dirt. Then the hum kicked up again, louder than before, rattling my teeth. It wasn't coming from anywhere I could pin down. It was everywhere, like the air itself was buzzing. I shouted, "Who's out there?" My voice bounced off the trees, sounding small and stupid. No answer, just that damn hum. I climbed into the truck bed, figuring I'd feel safer up high. That's when I saw it. Lights flickering at the top of the lookout tower. Not one, but a bunch, blinking on and off like some messed up signal. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was losing it, but they kept going. My gut twisted. Nobody's supposed to be up there, right? I hadn't seen a soul all day. The lights stopped, and for a minute, it was dead quiet. Then I heard this scraping. Metal on metal, faint but close, like something dragging across the ground. I aimed the flashlight toward the sound, and my beam caught a glint, something shiny, moving fast through the underbrush. I yelled again, "Hey, cut the crap," but my voice cracked, and whatever it was didn't stop. I stayed put, gripping the knife so hard my knuckles hurt. The scraping got louder, circling the truck now. I couldn't see it. Too dark, too fast, but it was big, bigger than a coyote or anything normal out here. My brain was screaming at me to start the truck and peel out, but the damn thing wouldn't even click. I was stuck, and this horror show was just getting started. Then the tower lights flared up again, bright as hell this time, bathing the whole clearing in this sickly yellow glow. I squinted, and that's when I saw them. Figures at the base of the tower. 3, maybe 4, standing stock still, heads tilted up like they were watching me. My stomach dropped. They weren't rangers, not in those weird, tattered coats. Too far to see faces, but the way they stood, it was wrong, disturbing as hell. The scraping stopped, but now there was this low whine, like a dog, but deeper, throatier. It came from behind the truck, and I swung the flashlight around. Nothing, just shadows. My hands were shaking now, and I kept muttering to myself, "You're fine, Everett, just chill." But I wasn't fine. Something scary was closing in, and I was a sitting duck. I ducked under the tarp, like that'd hide me from whatever was out there. The tower lights kept pulsing, and those figures didn't move an inch. I started piecing it together. The dead truck, the hum, the note from earlier. Don't stay after dark. Yeah, real helpful now. I should have bolted when I had the chance, but I'd been too bullheaded to admit something was off. The whine turned into a growl, close enough I could feel it in my chest. I peeked out, and the figures were gone, just vanished. But the growling didn't stop, and neither did the lights. Whatever was happening, it was centered on that tower, and I'd parked myself right in the middle of it. This wasn't just a bad camping trip anymore. It was a nightmare, and I was wide awake. The growl hit me like a punch, low and guttural, right outside the truck. I scrambled to the edge of the bed, flashlight shaking in my hand, and caught a glimpse. Eyes, yellow and huge, glaring from the bushes. Whatever it was lunged, slamming into the tailgate hard enough to rock the whole damn truck. I yelled, pure panic, and swung my knife like it'd do anything. The tarp ripped as it swiped again, claws shredding through like paper. I dove into the cab, slamming the door and locking it. Fat lot of good that'd do. The engine still wouldn't turn over, just this pathetic whine while that thing circled, snarling. Glass cracked as it smashed against the driver's side window, spiderwebbing the whole thing. I grabbed the flashlight and knife, kicked the passenger door open, and bolted. No plan, just pure, blind terror driving me. The forest was a blur, branches clawing my face, roots tripping me up. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the underbrush, fast and pissed. My lungs burned, but I kept running, aiming for the only thing I could think of, the lookout tower. Those creepy figures were gone, and maybe, just maybe, I could climb high enough to get away from this horror show. I hit the base of the tower, chest heaving, and started up the ladder. The rungs were slick with rust and dew, and my boots slipped twice. Nearly fell, picturing those jaws snapping me up. The growling was closer now, and I risked a look down. Big mistake. It was there, tall, mangy, all teeth and claws, staring up at me with those awful eyes. It wasn't a bear, wasn't anything I'd ever seen. Disturbing doesn't even cover it. Halfway up, the whole tower shook, metal screeching as that thing rammed the base. I clung on, swearing, and kept climbing. The lights at the top were still flashing, blinding me every few seconds. I made it to the platform, legs like jelly, and yanked the trapdoor shut behind me. My hands fumbled with the latch, but it wouldn't catch, rusted to hell. I shoved the broken chair over it instead, praying it'd hold. The thing hit the ladder, claws scraping metal, and I backed into the corner, knife out. The room was tiny, nowhere to hide, just those old logs and that stupid note staring me down. The growling stopped, replaced by this heavy breathing, right below the trapdoor. I held my breath, waiting for it to bust through, but it didn't. Minutes dragged by, 5, 10, I don't know, and it went quiet. Too quiet. I peeked out the window, heart hammering. The truck was trashed, hood up, windows smashed. No sign of the beast, but the tower lights dimmed, then cut out completely. I slumped against the wall, shaking, trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't stay here forever, but going back down felt like a death sentence. My phone was still dead in the cab, useless. Dawn was breaking, gray light creeping through the trees. I kept watch, every creak of the tower making me jump. I'd escaped, for now, but I wasn't dumb enough to think it was over. That thing was still out there, and I'd seen what it could do. I needed to get the hell out of this forest, but my truck was toast, and I was stranded. I started thinking about those figures again. Where'd they go? Were they part of this? My head was spinning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that climbing up here hadn't saved me. It had just trapped me somewhere worse. The air felt heavy, like something scary was still watching, waiting for me to slip up. Morning light didn't make me feel any safer. I stayed huddled in the tower, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, watching the forest wake up. Birds chirped like nothing had happened, but I knew better. My truck sat there, a mangled wreck, and I hadn't heard that thing since last night. Maybe it had moved on. Maybe I had a shot. I waited till the sun was higher, around 9, I guessed, no watch, before deciding to climb down. Dumb move, looking back, but sitting there felt like waiting to die. I eased the trapdoor open, wincing at every squeak, and listened. Nothing but wind. I took it slow, rung by rung, my hands slick with sweat. The ladder held, thank God, and I hit the ground running on fumes. The truck was my only hope. I sprinted over, dodging the claw marks gouged into the dirt. The cab was a mess, glass everywhere, seats torn up, but the keys were still in the ignition. I turned praying, and the engine sputtered. Once, twice, then it caught, roaring to life. I hooped, half laughing, half crying, and slammed it into gear. I peeled out, tires spinning on the dirt, heading for the main road. The forest blurred past, and I kept checking the rear view. Nothing chasing me, not yet. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely steer, but I was getting out. That's when I saw it, a flash of movement in the trees, too fast to track. My stomach sank. It wasn't over. I hit a straight stretch, pushing the truck hard, when the engine started coughing. Smoke poured from the hood. Damn thing was dying on me now? I floored it anyway, coaxing it along, but the speed dropped fast. Then I saw them, the figures from last night, standing right in the middle of the road, coats flapping in the breeze. I swerved, tires screaming, and clipped a tree. The truck spun, slamming into a ditch. Airbags popped, and my head cracked against the window, stars everywhere. I came to, blood in my mouth, and saw them closing in, slow and deliberate. The driver's door was jammed, and that growl started up again, loud and close. I fumbled for the knife, but it had fallen somewhere in the crash. They reached the truck, 3 of them, faces hidden under hoods, and yanked the door open like it was nothing. I swung a fist, weak and useless, and one grabbed my arm, cold as ice. The growling thing burst from the trees, towering over him, and I screamed. It lunged, and everything went red, pain, then black. I'd made it so close, but that split-second swerve was my tragedy. I don't know what they were, cultists, ghosts, something worse, or why they wanted me. Maybe I'd stumbled into their hunting ground, some messed-up ritual tied to that tower. All I know is I should have listened to that note. My truck's probably still there, rusting in that ditch, a warning nobody'll find. If you're ever in Wayne National Forest and see that lookout tower, don't stop. Don't camp. Just keep driving, cause whatever's out there doesn't let go. I learned that the hard way, and it's the last story I'll ever tell. My name is Elaine Morrow, and at 73 years old, I've learned to appreciate the quiet life. I live in a small apartment in Toledo, where I've been since my husband Richard passed away 5 years ago. My days have fallen into a comfortable routine: morning tea, crosswords, weekly calls with my son who lives in Seattle. But routine breeds restlessness, especially when you've still got some life left to live. That's what prompted me to dust off our old converted van that had been sitting in storage, a reminder of adventures past when Richard and I would escape to nature whenever his medical practice allowed. The decision to take a solo camping trip wasn't made lightly. My arthritis makes driving for long stretches difficult, and my children thought I was having some kind of late-life crisis. "Mom, are you sure about this?" my daughter Carolyn asked during our weekly video call, concern etching lines around her eyes. I assured her I was perfectly capable, that the van was comfortable enough to sleep in, and that Mohican State Park was only a couple hours' drive. Besides, I told her, it's not like I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail. I'll be parked in a designated campground with plenty of other people around. What I didn't tell Carolyn was that I'd chosen Mohican for a specific reason. 50 years ago, Richard proposed to me there, under a canopy of stars beside the Clear Fork River. We'd returned many times over the decades, but not since his diagnosis. This trip felt like a pilgrimage of sorts, a chance to say goodbye properly in a place that had meant so much to us both. I packed lightly, some comfortable clothes, my medications, Richard's old Polaroid camera, and enough food for 3 days. The forecast predicted perfect early autumn weather, ideal for what I hoped would be a peaceful communion with memories. The drive to Mohican was pleasant, the Ohio countryside rolling past my windows in waves of gold and amber. Farms gave way to increasingly dense forest as I approached the park, and by mid-afternoon, I was checking in at the ranger station. The young man behind the counter, Ranger Mercer according to his name tag, raised his eyebrows slightly at the sight of me, a white-haired woman in sensible shoes requesting a campsite. "You camping alone, ma'am?" he asked, not unkindly. When I confirmed that I was, he hesitated before saying, "Usually I'd put you in the main campground, but we've got a large scout troop there this weekend. Pretty noisy bunch. There's a smaller area across the river that might suit you better. More peaceful." I appreciated his thoughtfulness and accepted the alternative site. He marked it on my map, Campsite 8 in an area called Hemlock Hollow, and gave me directions that involved crossing an old bridge and following a narrow road about a mile from the main campground. "There's a camp host that checks the area twice daily," Ranger Mercer assured me, "and you can use this if you need anything." He handed me a small emergency whistle on a lanyard. "Park policy for campers in the more secluded areas," he explained, though something in his manner suggested this wasn't a standard practice. The route to Hemlock Hollow took me deeper into the forest than I'd anticipated. The road narrowed to little more than a dirt path, branches occasionally scraping against the sides of my van. When I finally reached Campsite 8, I understood why Ranger Mercer had suggested it. A beautiful, level clearing surrounded by towering hemlock trees, with the soothing sound of the river just beyond a gentle slope. It was perfect, almost exactly like the spot where Richard had proposed all those years ago. Perhaps too perfect, too similar, as if the forest had reconstructed my memories into physical form. I parked the van facing the river, its rear doors opening to the view. Although it was only mid-afternoon, the tall trees created an early twilight in the hollow. I set up my small camp table and chair, heated water for tea on my portable stove, and settled in to enjoy the tranquility. The air smelled of pine and earth, and for the first time in months, the constant ache in my chest, the one that had nothing to do with physical ailments, seemed to ease slightly. I took out Richard's Polaroid and snapped a picture of the view, watching as the image gradually appeared on the film. But when it fully developed, I frowned in confusion. There appeared to be a figure standing among the trees across the river. Just a shadow, really, probably a trick of the light. As dusk deepened into true darkness, I retreated into the van, reading by lantern light before settling into the small bed built into the back. Through the windows, I could see stars appearing between the hemlock branches, bringing back memories of lying beside Richard in this very forest, planning our future together. I fell asleep to the gentle sound of the river and the occasional hoot of an owl, the most peaceful I'd felt since the funeral. I didn't notice then how the usual forest sounds, the rustling of small creatures, the chirping of insects, had gradually faded to silence. Morning arrived with mist clinging to the ground and wrapping around the trees, giving Hemlock Hollow an ethereal quality. I made coffee and oatmeal, enjoying the stillness as I planned my day. There was a hiking trail that followed the river, one Richard and I had walked countless times. I decided to see if I could reach our special spot, a small sandy beach where he'd knelt with a ring half a century ago. I packed water and snacks in a small day pack, locked the van, and set off along the trail. The mist was already burning off, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dusty beams. The path was rougher than I remembered, roots and rocks creating obstacles that my aging knees protested against. Still, there was something rejuvenating about being surrounded by ancient trees, by the continuity of nature. These hemlocks had stood witness to my young love and now to my widowhood. There was comfort in their indifference to human timelines. About a mile downstream, I noticed the trail was becoming increasingly overgrown, as if rarely used these days. Strange, given that this had once been a popular route. Even stranger were the symbols I began to notice carved into tree trunks, crude spirals, and what looked like stylized eyes. Park graffiti wasn't uncommon, of course, but these markings looked aged, the bark having grown around them over many years. I ran my fingers over one such carving, feeling an unexpected chill despite the warming day. I was considering turning back when I caught a glimpse of water through the trees, the river bending exactly as I remembered. A few more minutes, and I should reach our beach. I pushed forward, ignoring the way the trail seemed to disappear entirely in places. When I finally emerged at the riverside, disappointment washed over me. This wasn't the beach I remembered. The sandy shore had eroded away, replaced by a muddy bank strewn with driftwood. And across the water, where there should have been more forest, stood what looked like an abandoned ranger cabin, its windows dark, empty squares, its door hanging askew. Something about that cabin raised the hairs on my arms. It shouldn't have been there. I was certain it hadn't existed during our previous visits. As I stared, trying to orient myself, movement caught my eye. A figure appeared in the cabin's doorway, tall, dressed in what might have been a park ranger uniform, though from this distance it was hard to be sure. They stood perfectly still, watching me. I raised my hand in greeting, but they didn't respond. Uncomfortable now, I decided this must not be our special place after all. I'd made a wrong turn somewhere, and this part of the river wasn't familiar territory. As I turned to retrace my steps, I noticed something half buried in the mud near the water's edge, a flash of metal catching sunlight. Curiosity drew me closer. Kneeling carefully, I brushed away wet leaves to reveal an old park ranger badge, its surface corroded but still legible. Senior Ranger Thomas Blackwood, Mohican State Park. The date stamped beneath the name read 1973, the very year Richard and I had first come here. I pocketed the badge, thinking to turn it in at the ranger station as a historical curiosity. The return journey seemed to take twice as long, the trail somehow more convoluted than on my outward hike. Twice I found myself in unfamiliar clearings, having to backtrack to find the path again. The forest felt different too, quieter, the birds that had been singing earlier now conspicuously absent. By the time I caught sight of my van through the trees, the sun was already westering, and my knees were screaming in protest at the unexpected exertion. At my campsite, I found evidence someone had been there during my absence. Boot prints in the soft earth around my van, different from my own smaller footprints. The camp host checking on things, I assumed, though they hadn't left any note. I unlocked the van, stepped inside, and immediately sensed something was off. Nothing was missing or obviously disturbed, yet things felt subtly rearranged, as if someone had carefully examined my belongings and replaced them just slightly differently. The photo I'd taken yesterday, which I'd left on the small counter, was now face down. I tried to shake off my unease, attributing it to an old woman's imagination and fatigue from the hike. I heated soup for an early dinner, watching as the forest darkened around me earlier than seemed natural. Perhaps it was just the dense canopy, but darkness seemed to pool between the trees like spilled ink. I took out Richard's Polaroid again, hoping to capture the sunset colors on the river. The camera whirred and ejected a photo, but when the image developed, my blood ran cold. Just visible at the frame's edge was a figure in what appeared to be a ranger uniform, standing at the tree line behind my van. I quickly turned to look, but there was nobody there. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every creak of the van, every rustle outside sent my heart racing. Around midnight, I heard what sounded like footsteps circling my campsite, measured, deliberate steps that paused occasionally, as if their owner was listening for something. I lay frozen in my bed, barely breathing, until they eventually faded away. When exhaustion finally pulled me under, I dreamed of Richard standing across the river, trying to shout something I couldn't hear over the rushing water. Morning brought no relief. A heavy fog had settled in Hemlock Hollow, so dense I could barely see the river from my van. As I made coffee with shaking hands, I noticed something on my windshield, a Polaroid photo, not one of mine, weathered and faded with age. I retrieved it cautiously. The image showed a young couple by the river, their faces bright with love and promise. With a jolt of recognition that nearly stopped my heart, I realized I was looking at Richard and myself, exactly as we'd been 50 years ago, standing on the beach I'd failed to find yesterday. We'd never taken a Polaroid that day. Richard had bought the camera years later. Yet here was evidence of a moment I'd lived, captured from an angle that suggested someone watching from the trees. The discovery of that impossible photograph shattered any pretense that everything was normal. With trembling fingers, I turned it over, finding faded handwriting on the back. The curious ones always return. The penmanship was unfamiliar. The ink faded to a rusty brown that looked uncomfortably like dried blood. I pocketed the photo alongside the ranger badge, no longer certain I wanted to report either to park authorities. Something was deeply wrong in Hemlock Hollow. An instinct told me the danger might not be limited to whatever lurked in the forest. I decided to leave immediately, abandoning my plans for a 3-day stay. As I packed up my few belongings, movement at the tree line caught my eye. A figure standing motionless among the hemlocks, partially obscured by fog. The uniform was unmistakably that of a park ranger, but even at this distance, I could tell something was off about the proportions. The arms too long, the head sitting awkwardly on shoulders that seemed oddly angled. When I blinked, the figure was gone, leaving me questioning whether stress and age were playing tricks on my eyes. The van's engine turned over with a reassuring rumble, but my relief was short-lived. I'd gone no more than 50 yards when the engine sputtered and died, the dashboard lights flickering before going dark. Decades of road trips had taught me the basics of troubleshooting, but nothing I tried would coax the engine back to life. The battery seemed fine, which suggested either the fuel line or the electrical system. Either way, I was stranded until help arrived. I considered my options. The emergency whistle Ranger Mercer had given me seemed my best bet, but the camp host might not be due for hours. My cell phone, predictably, showed no service in this remote hollow. I could attempt to walk back to the main campground, but the thought of encountering that strange figure on the narrow road made my skin crawl. In the end, I decided to stay with the van and use the whistle only if I heard someone nearby. Drawing attention to myself in this fog, with unknown watchers in the trees, seemed unwise. As the morning wore on with excruciating slowness, the fog showed no signs of lifting. If anything, it seemed to thicken, muffling sounds and limiting visibility to mere yards. Occasionally, I thought I heard voices, distant conversations that would cut off abruptly when I strained to listen. Twice I spotted movement in the mist, shambling figures that disappeared when I called out. By noon, I'd retreated to the van, doors locked, windows fogged from my anxious breathing. The sound that finally broke the silence was so normal it startled me. The crunch of tires on gravel, an engine approaching. Relief flooded through me as headlights penetrated the fog, illuminating my stranded van from behind. I grabbed my purse and stepped outside, waving gratefully at the park service truck now parking behind me. The uniform was the first thing I noticed as the driver emerged, the familiar olive green of Mohican State Park Rangers. The face, when it became visible, sent ice through my veins. "Mrs. Morrow," said the man who couldn't possibly be Ranger Thomas Blackwood, looking exactly as he had in 1973. "We've been expecting you back." His face was unnaturally smooth, almost waxy, his movements stiff as he approached. "Car trouble?" he asked, his voice carrying an echo as if speaking in a large, empty room rather than the dense forest. "Let me take a look." He moved toward the hood of my van without waiting for my response. I backed away, clutching my purse to my chest. "Who are you?" My voice emerged as a whisper. "You can't be Blackwood. That badge I found. It's 50 years old." The ranger paused, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Found my badge, did you? Been looking for that." He held out his hand. "I'll take it back now." Instinct kept my hand firmly on my purse. "The camp host will be checking on me soon." I lied, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "And my children are expecting my call. They'll worry if they don't hear from me." Blackwood's smile widened, teeth too white, and even for a man who should have been in his 80s, if he was alive at all. "No one's coming, Mrs. Morrow. Hemlock Hollow isn't on the regular patrol route. Hasn't been since '73. And cell service? In this hollow." He chuckled, the sound like stones grinding together. "You really should have checked the map more carefully." As he spoke, I became aware of movement in the fog surrounding us. Figures emerging between the trees, each wearing variations of ranger uniforms from different eras. Some appeared relatively normal, while others moved with the jerky, uncoordinated motions of broken puppets. They formed a loose circle around my van, blocking any escape route. Among them, I spotted the figure I'd seen across the river, a woman in a modern ranger uniform, her face unsettlingly blank, name tag reading Mercer. "My son," the vacant-eyed female ranger said in a flat voice. Always so helpful, sending the curious ones our way. With horrifying clarity, I realized the young man at the ranger station hadn't been doing me a favor by directing me to this isolated spot. He'd been feeding me to whatever lurked in Hemlock Hollow. How many other solitary campers had been redirected here over the years? How many had never left? Blackwood took a step toward me, hands still extended. The badge and the photo, Mrs. Morrow. They belonged to our collection. When I remained frozen in place, his facade of politeness slipped. "We've been watching you and your husband for 50 years, waiting for one of you to return. The curious ones always do." His face contorted, features shifting like wax near a flame. "He would have come back too, if illness hadn't taken him first. Now you're here in his place. To complete our circle." My paralysis broke at the mention of Richard. Whatever these things were, they had no right to speak of him, to have watched our most precious moments together. Anger flooded through me, temporarily overwhelming my fear. Without conscious thought, I reached for the emergency whistle hanging around my neck and blew with all the strength my aging lungs could muster. The shrill sound cut through the fog like a knife, making several of the shambling figures wince and cover their ears. Blackwood's reaction was more extreme. He staggered backward as if physically struck, his face rippling grotesquely. "Silence her," he snarled, composure entirely gone. Two of the figures lurched toward me, hands outstretched. I retreated to the van's open door, fumbling with the keys still in the ignition. In desperation, I tried the engine again, and to my shock, it roared to life. Whatever had affected it earlier, mechanical failure or something more sinister, had apparently been temporary. I slammed the door shut just as gnarled fingers clawed at the window. Throwing the van into reverse, I floored the accelerator, not caring about the teeth-jarring bumps as I backed down the narrow road. In my rearview mirror, I could see the ranger things pursuing on foot, moving with unnatural speed. Blackwood himself had vanished, but instinct told me he wouldn't be far behind. When I'd put enough distance between us, I managed a frantic three-point turn, pointing the van back toward the bridge and the main campground beyond. The fog seemed to thicken around me as I drove, as if trying to swallow the van whole. The headlights penetrated only a few feet ahead, forcing me to crawl along at a dangerous snail's pace. Each bend in the road brought fresh anxiety. What if they were waiting around the corner? What if Blackwood had somehow circled ahead? The forest pressed close on either side, branches scraping against the windows like fingernails trying to get in. I was less than halfway to the bridge when my headlights illuminated a fallen tree blocking the narrow road, a massive hemlock that hadn't been there on my drive in. It was too large to drive around, the ditches on either side too deep to navigate in my van. As I sat paralyzed with indecision, rain began to patter against the windshield, quickly intensifying to a downpour that reduced visibility even further. The rational part of my brain suggested waiting out the storm, but instinct screamed that staying still meant death. A decision formed with surprising clarity. I would have to continue on foot. The bridge couldn't be more than half a mile ahead, and beyond it lay the main campground with actual people who might help. I gathered my purse, a flashlight, and Richard's old jacket, which I'd brought along for comfort more than practicality. The photo and badge I kept securely in my pocket, unwilling to leave behind these impossible artifacts that might help convince others of what I'd encountered. The moment I stepped outside, the rain soaked through my clothes, the wind cutting through layers like ice. My flashlight beam bobbed weakly against the curtain of water as I picked my way around the fallen tree. Every few steps I glanced back, expecting to see figures emerging from the gloom, but the road behind remained empty. Too empty. Even the sounds of the storm seemed muffled, distant, as if I were hearing it through water. I pushed forward, following the muddy road that grew increasingly treacherous underfoot. My arthritic knees protested each step, and twice I nearly fell on the slippery surface. The trees loomed larger somehow, their branches reaching lower, forcing me to duck and weave as I walked. In places, roots had erupted through the road surface, creating obstacles that seemed deliberately placed to trip unwary travelers. Time became fluid and unreliable. The bridge should have appeared long ago, yet the road continued to wind through trees that looked increasingly unfamiliar. Had I somehow strayed onto a different path? The rain had diminished to a steady drizzle, but fog was rolling in again, creating ghostly shapes that resolved into ordinary bushes or tree stumps when approached. My flashlight began to flicker, its batteries weakening at the worst possible moment. A sound behind me froze my blood, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps on wet gravel. I whirled around, my feeble light catching nothing but swirling mist. "Who's there?" I called, my voice thin and tremulous. No answer came, but when I turned back to continue, I nearly screamed. Standing directly in my path was a figure in a Park Service uniform. Not Blackwood, but the female ranger with the vacant eyes and Mercer name tag. "You shouldn't run, Mrs. Morrow," she said, her voice monotonous yet somehow carrying over the rain. "The Hollow has chosen you, as it chose us." She gestured to the trees around us, and I noticed with mounting horror that what I had taken for unusually shaped trunks were actually more figures, half merged with the forest itself, their bodies grown through with roots and fungi, faces barely recognizable as human. "We've been waiting since you left that first time. The curious ones always come back." I backed away, my heel catching on a root that hadn't been there a moment before. As I stumbled, my hand instinctively clutched the whistle around my neck. The ranger thing that had been Mercer noticed the movement and lunged forward with unnatural speed. "No more noise," she hissed, fingers like branches reaching for my throat. I ducked away, losing my balance completely and tumbling down an embankment I hadn't realized was beside the road. The fall was mercifully short, but jarring enough to knock the wind from my lungs. As I lay dazed, rain pattering on my face, I realized I'd dropped my flashlight somewhere in the tumble. Darkness pressed in from all sides, broken only by occasional flashes of lightning that illuminated my surroundings in stark relief. I was in a shallow ravine, the road several feet above me, dense underbrush all around. In one such flash, I saw Mercer peering down from the roadside, her head tilted at an impossible angle. Behind her stood more figures, including one I recognized with a jolt of terror. Blackwood, his face now barely human, features running like melted wax. "Find her," he commanded, his voice resonating through the earth itself. "She must join the Watchers. She has seen too much." The figures began to spread out, some clambering down the embankment with jerky, insect-like movements, others melting into the trees as if becoming part of the forest itself. I pressed myself deeper into the underbrush, ignoring the scratches of thorns and the mud soaking through my clothes. Another lightning flash revealed salvation. A concrete pipe running beneath the road, large enough for a person to crawl through. A drainage culvert, most likely leading toward the river. Without hesitation, I crawled toward it, ignoring the protests of my aging body. The pipe was slimy and cold, rainwater already flowing through it in a shallow stream, but it represented my only chance. I pulled myself inside just as footsteps crunched in the leaves where I had been hiding. The culvert was a nightmare of darkness and claustrophobia, the sound of my own panicked breathing echoing off the concrete walls. I crawled forward on hands and knees, icy water soaking through my pants, using touch alone to navigate. Sometimes the pipe seemed to narrow, forcing me to squirm through on my belly, fighting panic as I imagined becoming stuck, trapped until Blackwood and his Watchers found me. Other times, cross pipes appeared, offering choices I had to make blindly, praying each turn led towards safety rather than deeper into danger. How long I crawled through that lightless hell, I couldn't say. Time lost all meaning in the pitch blackness. My knees were raw, my hands numb. When I finally saw a faint grayish light ahead, the end of the pipe, hope surged through me, giving strength to limbs that had been ready to quit. I pushed forward with renewed determination, finally emerging into the misty twilight of what appeared to be the riverbank. I'd made it to the river, but nothing looked familiar. The bridge was nowhere in sight. Instead, I found myself on a muddy shore flanked by massive hemlock trees, their branches creating a cathedral-like canopy overhead. Across the water, barely visible through the mist, stood a structure that made my heart sink, the abandoned ranger cabin I'd seen earlier. Somehow, impossibly, I'd traveled in a circle, returning to the very spot where I'd found Blackwood's badge. The realization that I had somehow been led back to where my nightmare began sent waves of despair washing over me. My clothes were soaked, my body trembling with cold and exhaustion, and darkness was falling rapidly. Across the river, lights had appeared in the windows of the ranger cabin, warm, inviting lights that hadn't been there before. A trap, surely, but one that preyed on the most basic human instincts for shelter and warmth. In my current state, even knowing what waited inside, the temptation was almost overwhelming. I fought against it, forcing myself to think clearly. The real campground had to be somewhere nearby. The river itself could be a guide, follow it downstream, and I should eventually reach the bridge. With no better option, I began to walk along the muddy bank, each step a small victory against muscles that begged to surrender. The badge and photo in my pocket felt impossibly heavy, as if the objects themselves were trying to root me to this haunted place. The mist continued to thicken around me as I walked, sometimes clearing just enough to reveal that the cabin across the river was keeping pace with me, always remaining directly opposite regardless of how far I traveled. Impossible, of course, yet undeniably happening. The forest was warping reality itself, bending space to keep me trapped within its influence. Still, I pressed on, because the alternative, giving up, meant joining those half-human figures among the trees. A sound behind me made me turn, splashing footsteps approaching along the riverbank. The fog parted just enough to reveal Ranger Mercer, her movements more fluid now, almost graceful, her face a perfect mask of concern. "Mrs. Morrow, thank goodness," she called, her voice startlingly normal. "We've been searching everywhere for you. There's a storm system moving in, and it's not safe out here." She approached with her hands extended, like someone trying not to startle a wild animal. "Let me help you back to safety." For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed her. The cold and exhaustion made the offered help desperately tempting. But as she drew closer, I noticed how her feet left no imprints in the mud, how rain passed through her rather than landing on her uniform. "You're not real," I whispered, backing away. "None of this is real." Her expression flickered, concern melting into something ancient and hungry. "Real enough to keep you, Elaine," she said, my name sounding wrong in her mouth. As we've kept so many curious ones before. I turned to run, but found my path blocked by more figures emerging from the mist. Rangers from every era, some in uniforms dating back decades, others in more modern attire. Among them walked Blackwood, his face now completely inhuman, features arranged in approximately the right places, but wrong in fundamental ways, like a child's drawing of a person brought to life. 50 years we've waited for you to return," he said, his voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Your husband escaped us through death. You won't be so fortunate." They began to close in from all sides, herding me toward the river's edge. In desperation, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the badge and photo. "Is this what you want?" I cried, holding them up. "Take them and let me go." Blackwood's too wide mouth stretched into a parody of a smile. "Those are just tokens, Mrs. Morrow. Breadcrumbs to lead you back. It's you we've always wanted. You and all the others who notice too much, who see things they shouldn't." As they drew closer, I noticed something I hadn't before. Each figure bore some small token similar to my photo and badge. A wristwatch here, a wedding ring there, eyeglasses, a child's toy. Mementos of the people they had once been, before the forest claimed them. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. These weren't monsters wearing ranger disguises. These had been actual people once, transformed by whatever ancient hunger lived in Hemlock Hollow. My back was literally against the river now, the cold water lapping at my heels. Across the water, the cabin door stood open, warm light spilling out, a figure silhouetted in the doorway. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought it was Richard, beckoning me home. The illusion was so perfect, so precisely tuned to my deepest longing, that I nearly stepped into the water willingly. What stopped me was a detail no supernatural mimic could know. The silhouette's posture was straight, unburdened by the spinal curvature that had marked Richard's final years. The real Richard, my Richard, had carried that physical manifestation of his illness with dignity. This imposter stood as Richard had 50 years ago, when we first visited this cursed place. Rage supplanted fear. How dare they use him against me, corrupt my most precious memories? With sudden clarity, I understood what I needed to do. These things, whatever they truly were, wanted not just to take me, but to transform me, to make me one of their eternal watchers. They fed on connections to the past, on memories and mementos that tethered souls to places. The badge and photo weren't just lures, they were anchors, binding me to Hemlock Hollow as surely as chains. I held both items over the river. "You want these? Come and get them." Blackwood's face contorted with alarm. "Don't," he hissed, lunging forward with unnatural speed. But I was already releasing them, watching as the current caught them instantly. The reaction was immediate and violent. The figures surrounding me convulsed as if physically wounded, their forms blurring at the edges. The illusion across the river shattered, the cabin transforming before my eyes into a long-abandoned ruin, its roof partially collapsed, its windows empty sockets. In that moment of distraction, I made my move. Instead of fleeing back along the bank, I plunged directly into the river itself. The shock of cold water stole my breath, the current immediately tugging at my clothes. It was a desperate gamble. At my age, swimming in such conditions could easily prove fatal. But drowning seemed preferable to the fate that awaited me on shore. I heard inhuman wails behind me as I struck out for the opposite bank, my arms moving mechanically, survival instinct overriding the pain in my joints. The current was stronger than I'd anticipated, carrying me downstream at alarming speed. Several times my head went under, river water filling my mouth and nose. My waterlogged clothes became deadweights, pulling me down. Just as my strength was failing, my foot struck something solid, a sandbar, the river shallowing as it widened around a bend. With the last of my energy, I dragged myself toward what appeared to be a small beach. As I collapsed on the sand, coughing up river water, I realized with a shock where I was. The special beach where Richard had proposed, the exact spot I'd been searching for earlier. The sandy shore hadn't eroded away at all. I'd simply been prevented from finding it by whatever controlled Hemlock Hollow. Now, having broken at least part of its hold over me, I could see the place as it truly was. Beautiful, ordinary, unmarked by supernatural malice. The sky was clearing overhead, stars appearing between racing clouds. I lay exhausted but alive, too drained to move further. Across the river, I could see them watching, shadows among trees, their ranger uniforms now appearing tattered and rotted, their true forms more visible without the anchors of memory to sustain their disguise. They made no attempt to cross the water, though whether they couldn't or simply wouldn't, I didn't know. Dawn found me still on that beach, having spent the night drifting between consciousness and something deeper. The morning sun revealed a path leading away from the river, an actual marked trail that I was certain hadn't been visible the day before. My body protested every movement as I forced myself to stand, muscles cramped and skin chilled to the bone. But a stubborn streak that had served me well through 73 years refused to let me give up when salvation might be just beyond the next bend. The trail led directly to the main campground, a journey of less than 20 minutes despite my weakened state. As I stumbled into the bustling area, I must have been a frightening sight, soaked, mud-covered, wild-eyed. A young family packing up their campsite saw me first, the father rushing over to help while the mother called for assistance. Within minutes I was wrapped in blankets, sipping hot tea from a paper cup as park rangers. Real ones, their faces normally proportioned, their movements naturally human, radioed for medical assistance. They asked what had happened, of course. I told them I'd gotten lost, that my van had broken down in Hemlock Hollow, that I tried to walk back but fallen into the river. I said nothing about Blackwood or the watchers in the forest or the impossible cabin that appeared and disappeared. Such tales would only earn me a psychiatric evaluation alongside treatment for exposure and exhaustion. Besides, without the badge or photo as evidence, who would believe me? The park's superintendent himself came to speak with me as paramedics checked my vitals. Hemlock Hollow, he repeated, frowning. That area's been closed to camping for decades, ever since the incident in '73. When I asked what incident, his expression grew guarded. Just an administrative matter, he said, clearly unwilling to elaborate. But one of the paramedics, older than the others, gave me a knowing look. Later, as he was checking my blood pressure, he whispered, "They don't like to talk about it." 6 rangers disappeared that summer, including the chief ranger. Found their vehicles, but never found them. My father was on the search team. He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Dad said they found strange carvings on trees and things that didn't make sense, like footprints that started and stopped in the middle of nowhere. The official report blamed it on some kind of cult activity, but locals know better. Some places in these woods just hunger. They found my van later that day, parked exactly where I'd left it. No fallen tree blocking the road, no sign of mechanical trouble. Inside, everything was undisturbed except for one detail that sent ice through my already chilled blood. Sitting on the dashboard was Richard's Polaroid camera, which I was certain had been in my bag when I fled. Beside it lay a single developed photo showing an elderly woman, me, walking along the river, clearly taken from behind without my knowledge. I told no one about the photo. Instead, I asked that they donate the van and its contents to charity. I wanted nothing that had been in Hemlock Hollow, nothing that might serve as an anchor for whatever dwelled there. My son flew in from Seattle to escort me home, concerned about my accident and insistent that I move closer to him and his family. I agreed without argument, suddenly eager to put as much distance as possible between myself and Ohio's forests. In the hospital where they treated me for hypothermia and exhaustion, I had a single visitor besides my son, a young man who introduced himself as Tyler Mercer. My heart nearly stopped at the name, but his open, concerned face bore no resemblance to the vacant-eyed figure that had pursued me. "I wanted to apologize," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "I shouldn't have sent you to Hemlock Hollow. It's just, you reminded me of my grandmother, and she always said that area had the prettiest views before they closed it." "Your grandmother," I repeated carefully. "Was she a ranger here?" He nodded, his face brightening. "For 20 years. Retired just last spring." He pulled out his phone, showing me a photo of a woman in her 60s, gray-haired but vibrant, wearing a modern ranger uniform with pride. The name tag clearly read Mercer, but this was a fully human face, not the horror that had pursued me through the fog. "She's the one who got me the summer job at the welcome desk," he added. "Said the park was in our blood." I didn't know what to make of this information then, and still don't now. Was the thing wearing Ranger Mercer's form some kind of prediction or warning? A glimpse of what might happen if the young man's grandmother returned to Hemlock Hollow? Or had the entity simply plucked the name from my subconscious after I'd interacted with her grandson? The questions remain unanswered, and I prefer it that way. Some mysteries are safer left unsolved. I've told no one else about what really happened at Mohican State Park. Not my children, not the therapist they insisted I see afterward, not even this journal until now. But lately, I've been dreaming of hemlock trees and fog-shrouded rivers. In these dreams, I stand on a sandy beach while Richard calls to me from a cabin across the water, his voice so real, so beloved that even knowing the danger, I find myself taking steps toward him. I wake with tears on my face and a certainty that the dreams are more than dreams. They're invitations. Yesterday, a package arrived at my new address in Seattle. No return address, no postmark, just my name written in faded ink. Inside was Richard's old Polaroid camera, which I had left behind in Ohio. Tucked in the film compartment was a single undeveloped photo. I haven't looked at it. I won't. Some anchors are too dangerous to acknowledge. Some connections too perilous to maintain. The camera sits in my bedside drawer as I write this, a tether to something hungry and patient that waits in a hollow among ancient trees, something that knows the curious ones always return, sooner or later. I've asked my son to cremate me when I die. No grave, no marker, nothing that could serve as a focus for memory or longing. Because now I understand the true horror of Hemlock Hollow. It doesn't just take, it transforms. Those who notice too much, who see behind the veil of ordinary reality, become watchers themselves, eternal sentinels luring others to join their silent vigil. And part of me, the part that still aches for Richard after all these years, wonders if perhaps he's there too, waiting among the trees, another curious one who returned in the only way he could. I'm Juniper Voss, 28 years old, and I live in Erie, Pennsylvania. Last month, I got fed up with my dead-end barista gig. Spilling oat milk on myself for minimum wage ain't living the dream, you know? So, I decided to take my beat-up Jeep Wrangler and head south to Hocking Hill State Park in Ohio. It's a couple hours away, all rugged cliffs and waterfalls, and I figured sleeping in the Jeep would be my ticket to some peace. I packed light but smart, sleeping bag, a cooler with snacks and water, a lantern, and my dad's old fishing rod for kicks. I'd heard about this secluded spot near Old Man's Cave, off the main trails, where you can park and just soak in the quiet. My best friend, Cal, said I was nuts for going alone, but I brushed him off. I needed this. Me, the woods, no drama. The drive down was gorgeous. I cranked some Fleetwood Mac, let the wind tangle my hair, and watched the landscape shift from flatlands to rolling hills. Hocking Hills greeted me with this explosion of green, pines, oaks, the works. I found the turnoff, a gravel path barely wide enough for the Jeep, and bumped along till I hit a clearing. Perfect spot, right by a creek. I pulled in as the sun dipped low, turning the sky this wild pink. The Jeep's back seat folds flat, so I set up my little nest, sleeping bag unrolled, lantern hung from the roll bar. I stepped out to stretch, breathing in that crisp, earthy smell. The creek gurgled nearby, and I could see the outline of a ranger station maybe a mile off, lights barely flickering through the trees. First night was all about settling in. I munched on some jerky, sipped a soda, and leaned against the Jeep, watching fireflies blink on. I'd planned to fish the next day, maybe hike a bit. Nothing intense, just chill vibes. The ranger station caught my eye again, though. Something about it felt off. Too quiet, maybe. I shrugged it off as city nerves. Darkness fell quick, blanketing everything. I climbed into the Jeep, locked the doors, habit, even out here, and cracked a window for air. The forest came alive with little noises, frogs, crickets, the occasional rustle. I love that stuff, usually. Makes me feel connected, you know? But tonight, it had this edge, like the woods were holding their breath. I was dozing off when I heard it. A sharp knock, like knuckles on metal. I bolted upright, heart racing, and fumbled for the lantern. It had come from the Jeep's hood, clear as day. I flicked the light on, peering out the windshield. Nothing. Just trees and that damn creek. I laughed it off. Probably a branch falling, right? Still, I couldn't shake it. I double-checked the locks, feeling dumb but spooked. The ranger station's lights were still on in the distance, steady and faint. I told myself I'd swing by tomorrow, say hi, maybe ask if they'd heard anything weird. No big deal. I settled back down, lantern off, and tried to sleep. Lying there, I kept picturing that knock, like someone testing if I was awake. It's funny how your mind runs wild when you're alone. I'd camped before, no problem, but this felt different. Hocking Hills was stunning, sure, but there was something lurking under the surface, something I couldn't pin down yet. Guess I'd find out soon enough. Morning light filtered through the Jeep's windows, waking me up, all groggy. I'd slept like crap, kept jerking awake, expecting another knock that never came. My neck was stiff from the weird angle, and I groaned as I climbed out. The clearing looked normal, creek bubbling, birds chirping, but I couldn't shake this antsy feeling, like I'd overstayed my welcome. I grabbed the fishing rod and headed to the creek, figuring some trout might cheer me up. The water was crystal clear, but after an hour, I hadn't caught squat. Weird. Hocking Hills is supposed to be crawling with fish. I gave up, trudging back to the Jeep, and that's when I noticed the tire. Flat as hell, rim kissing the dirt. I cursed, must have hit a rock on that gravel path yesterday. No spare. Of course. I'd meant to replace it after a blowout last year, but never got around to it. Rookie move, Juniper. I kicked the Jeep, mad at myself, and weighed my options. The ranger station wasn't far, maybe a mile through the woods. I could hike there, get help, be back before dark. Sounded better than sitting here sulking. I packed a water bottle and the lantern, just in case, and started walking. The trail was overgrown, all tangled vines and mud, and I kept tripping over roots. About halfway, I heard this faint whistle, like a tune, but off-key. I stopped, squinting through the trees. Nothing. Probably wind, I told myself, but it left this creepy chill down my spine. The ranger station popped into view eventually. A squat cabin with peeling paint and a rusty truck out front. I knocked, expecting some grizzled dude in a hat, but no answer. The door was unlocked, though, so I poked my head in. Empty. Desk cluttered with maps, a radio hissing static, coffee mug still warm. Where the hell was everybody? I stepped inside, calling out, "Hey, anyone here?" Just static and silence. That's when I saw the logbook, open to yesterday's date, with a scribbled entry. Perimeter check, 1900 hours. Unidentified movement near creek. My creek? My stomach flipped. This was getting disturbing, and I didn't like it one bit. I decided to head back, rangers or not. I'd figure out the tire myself. But as I turned to leave, the radio crackled, loud and sharp. A voice cut through, garbled but urgent. "Not safe. Get out." Then it died. I froze, staring at the thing. My hands were sweaty, and I couldn't tell if I'd imagined it. Nope, not sticking around to find out. The hike back felt longer. That whistle started up again, closer now, weaving through the trees. I picked up the pace, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. The Jeep came into sight, still lopsided, and I let out a shaky laugh. Home sweet home. But then I saw it. Scratches on the hood, deep and jagged, like something had clawed at it. I ran my fingers over the marks, heart pounding. Not a branch. Too precise, too angry. I told myself it was a bear, maybe a bobcat, but it didn't add up. The scratches weren't random. They circled that spot where I'd heard the knock. Something scary was messing with me, and I was starting to think the rangers knew more than their logbook let on. Night fell hard, and I was stuck in the Jeep, tires still flat, staring at those scratches. I tried patching it with some duct tape. Yeah, desperate times, but it wasn't holding air. The lantern cast this weak glow, making the woods look like a horror flick waiting to happen. I locked the doors, triple-checked them, and hunkered down, trying to ignore how exposed I felt. Then it started, a low rumble, like thunder but closer, vibrating through the ground. I sat up, gripping the fishing rod like it'd protect me. The sound rolled again, louder, and the Jeep shook. I flicked the lantern brighter, peering out, and saw the creek water rippling, like something big had splashed through it. My throat went dry. This wasn't normal. I heard voices next, whispers, sharp and fast, coming from the trees. Not the whistle from earlier, but actual words I couldn't make out. I cracked the window an inch, straining to listen, and caught a snatch. Here, now. My skin crawled. I slammed the window shut, telling myself it was hikers, But at midnight? In the middle of nowhere? Bullshit. The lantern flickered, and I smacked it. Batteries were fine, so why was it acting up? That's when I saw the shadows, tall, stretched shapes moving along the tree line. Not deer, not anything with 4 legs. They glided, silent except for those whispers, circling the clearing. My chest tightened, and I ducked low, praying they hadn't spotted me. The rumbling stopped, but the whispers got louder, overlapping into this creepy hum. I peeked up and saw one of them step into the light. Tall, way too tall, in a ranger uniform that hung wrong, like it didn't fit the body underneath. Its head turned, slow and jerky, and I swear it looked right at me. No face, just a blank stretch where one should have been. Disturbing doesn't even cut it. I bit my lip to keep from screaming, sliding down till I was flat on the seat. The thing didn't move closer, just stood there, whispering, picking up speed. Then the Jeep's radio, off since yesterday, crackled to life. Static blasted, then that same voice from the station. Leave. Now. Or. It cut off, and the whispers stopped dead. Silence hit like a brick. I waited, barely breathing, till I heard this heavy thud, like boots on dirt, right outside the Jeep. Something tapped the roof, slow and deliberate, and I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to look. The tapping circled, then stopped at the back window. I could feel it there, whatever it was, waiting. My mind raced. Rangers don't do this, right? This was some scary nightmare shit. After what felt like hours, the thudding moved off, fading into the woods. I sat up, shaking, and checked the windows. Nothing but darkness. The shadows were gone, but the lantern was still flickering, and the scratches on the hood glinted in the light. I grabbed the rod tighter, knowing it was useless against whatever that was. I kept replaying it. That faceless thing, the voice, the tapping. The Rangers were part of this, or something was pretending to be. I'd walked right into a trap, and Hocking Hills wasn't the chill escape I'd thought. Something was seriously wrong here, and I was smack in the middle of it, alone with a busted tire and a Jeep that felt more like a cage. I couldn't stay in that Jeep another second. Those whispers, that faceless thing, it was too much. I grabbed the lantern and fishing rod, kicked the door open, and ran. No plan, just pure adrenaline, legs pumping toward the trail I'd taken to the ranger station. The woods were pitch black, and I tripped over roots, scraping my knees bloody, but I didn't stop. The rumbling kicked up again, shaking the ground, and I heard that thudding. Fast, closing in. I swung the lantern around, catching glimpses of those tall shapes weaving through the trees. They weren't chasing yet, just hurting me, like I was prey. My lungs burned, but I pushed harder, the station's outline barely visible through the dark. I burst into the clearing, panting, and bolted for the cabin door. It was still unlocked, thank God, and I slammed it shut, shoving a chair under the knob. The radio was hissing again, louder, spitting garbled words I couldn't catch. I scanned the room for anything useful, maps, a flashlight, keys, and spotted a rusty axe leaning by the desk. Better than a fishing rod. The windows rattled, and I spun around. Those things were outside. 3 of them now, blank faces staring through the glass. The thudding stopped, replaced by this awful scraping, like nails on a chalkboard. One raised a hand, or whatever it had, and the window cracked. I grabbed the axe, yelling, "Back off," like they'd listen. The door buckled next, with splintering, and I knew I was screwed. I smashed the axe into the floorboards, desperate for an out, and hit something hollow, a trapdoor. I pried it open, dust choking me, and dropped into a crawl space. It stank of mold, but I didn't care, anything to get away from that horror show up top. I crawled, lantern swinging, till I hit a metal grate, fresh air seeping through. I bashed it with the axe, grunting, and it popped loose, dumping me into the woods behind the station. The rumbling was deafening now, and I saw him, those fake rangers, circling the cabin like they knew I'd slipped out. I bolted again, axe in hand. The trail looped back toward the Jeep, and I ran for it, hoping against hope it'd start. Branches tore at my arms, and I heard him behind me, whispers turning into this eerie chant. I hit the clearing, dove into the Jeep, and jammed the key in. It sputtered, come on, and roared to life. I floored it, gravel flying, as those things stepped into view. They didn't run, just watched, heads tilting as I peeled out. The rear view showed them fading into the dark, but the rumbling followed, rattling the Jeep. I swerved onto the gravel path, tires screaming, and kept going. Didn't matter where, just away. My hands were shaking, axe on the seat beside me, blood dripping from a cut I didn't remember getting. I hit the main road, tires humming on asphalt, and didn't slow down till the forest was a blur behind me. The rumbling faded, but my heart wouldn't quit pounding. I'd escaped, barely, but those things knew I'd been there. The Jeep was my lifeline, and I wasn't stopping till I saw city lights. Whatever they were, they owned those woods now. I drove till dawn, knuckles white on the wheel, the Jeep rattling like it was on its last legs. The flat tire held, just barely, patched with that shitty duct tape job. I pulled into a gas station outside Logan, Ohio, hands still trembling as I filled the tank. The clerk gave me a weird look, probably because I was covered in dirt and blood, but I didn't explain. How could I? I should have kept going, straight back to Erie, but I'm an idiot. I wanted my stuff, sleeping bag, cooler, all of it still in the Jeep at Hocking Hills. Figured I'd sneak back in daylight, grab it, and bounce before anything creepy woke up. Dumbest call I've ever made, but I was running on fumes and 0 cents. I rolled back into the park around noon, sun high, thinking it'd be safer. The clearing was quiet, too quiet. My stuff was there, scattered like something had rifled through it. I started packing fast, tossing everything into the Jeep, when I heard it, a whistle, that same off-key tune from day one. My stomach dropped. I turned, and there they were, 2 of them, standing at the tree line, uniforms tattered and wrong. No chanting this time, just silence, heads cocked like they were curious. I grabbed the axe, shouting, "I'm leaving, okay?" They didn't move, just watched. I threw the last bag in, jumped in the driver's seat, and gunned it. The Jeep lurched, tire finally gave out, rim grinding on gravel. I swore, slamming the dash, and they started walking, slow, deliberate, closing the gap. The engine coughed, dying right there, and I panicked. I swung the axe through the window at one as it reached in, hitting something solid but not stopping it. Cold fingers grabbed my wrist, yanking me half out. I kicked, screaming, and twisted free, falling onto the dirt. The other one loomed over me, blank face inches away, and I swung again, wild, sloppy. It caught the axe midair, snapping the handle like a twig. I scrambled back, but the first one grabbed my ankle, dragging me toward the trees. The whistle turned into a laugh, low, wet, terrifying. I clawed at the ground, nails breaking, but they were too strong. The Jeep sat there, useless, as they pulled me into the woods. Last thing I saw was the ranger station in the distance, lights flickering like a taunt. I'd escaped once, but coming back was my tragedy. Greed and stubbornness got me. They dragged me deeper, the forest swallowing me whole. I don't know what they were, rangers gone wrong, something older, but they'd marked me from that first knock. Hocking Hills isn't a park anymore, it's their turf. If you're ever there and hear a whistle, don't stop. Don't look, just run. My Jeep's probably still rusting in that clearing, a warning nobody'll heed. I should have listened to my gut, to that radio static, but I didn't. Now I'm gone, and they've got what they wanted. Another fool who thought daylight could save her. I'm Thane Carver, 35 years old, and I live in Buffalo, New York. Last week, I hit a wall. Work's been a grind, and my apartment's starting to feel like a cage. So, I decided to ditch it all for a few days and drive down to Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio. It's close enough for a quick escape, and I've got my trusty old Subaru Outback to crash in. No tent, just the back seat and some blankets. I threw together the basics: sleeping bag, a cooler with sandwiches and beer, a flashlight, and my beat-up harmonica for kicks. My buddy Leo warned me about going solo, said the woods can get weird, but I laughed it off. I needed the quiet, the space. Cuyahoga's got this lookout tower I'd read about online, tucked away near Brandywine Falls, supposed to have killer views. Sounded like my kind of spot. The drive was smooth, all golden leaves and crisp air whipping through the windows. I blasted some Tom Petty, letting the road unwind me. By late afternoon, I rolled into the park, tires crunching on a dirt path off the main drag. The tower poked up through the trees, tall, weathered, kinda lonely. I parked a few hundred yards away, under a big oak. I hopped out, stretching my legs, and took it all in. The falls roared faintly in the distance. and the air smelled like wet moss and pine. I popped the hatch, tossed my sleeping bag in the back, and rigged a tarp over the Subaru's roof. Keeps the dew off, you know? It felt good to be out here, away from Buffalo's gray slog. First night, I kept it simple. I cracked a beer, chewed on a turkey sandwich, and leaned against the car, watching the sun dip. The tower caught my eye again, dark against the orange sky, its little platform swaying in the breeze. I'd climb it tomorrow, maybe play a tune up there. For now, I was content just chilling. Darkness settled in quick, turning the woods into this thick, inky sprawl. I climbed into the Subaru, locked the doors, city habit, and cracked a window. The forest hummed with life, owls hooting, leaves rustling. I pulled out the harmonica, messed around with a few notes, then tucked it away. Felt like I was the only soul for miles. I was drifting off when I caught this faint glow, like a lantern, flickering near the tower. I sat up, squinting through the windshield. It bobbed once, twice, then winked out. I rubbed my eyes. Probably a hiker, right? But at this hour? I brushed it off, figuring I'd check it out tomorrow. Sleep didn't come easy after that. I kept picturing that light, wondering who'd be wandering around out here. The Subaru's not exactly a fortress, but it's home for now. I told myself it was nothing, just tired eyes playing tricks. Still, something about this place felt alive in a way I couldn't pin down. Lying there, I couldn't help but grin a little. I'd made it out, escaped the grind for a bit. The tower loomed in my head, though, tall and quiet, like it was waiting for me. Guess I'd find out what it was hiding soon enough. For now, I just listened to the woods breathe around me. I woke up to a gray dawn, fog curling around the Subaru like smoke. My back ached from the lumpy seat, and I groaned as I crawled out. The air was damp, clinging to my skin, and the tower was just a blurry shape through the haze. I stretched, popped the cooler, and grabbed a sandwich. Breakfast of champions, right? The Subaru wouldn't start. I turned the key. Nothing, not even a click. I cursed, popping the hood, but everything looked fine to my untrained eye. Battery's only a year old, so what the hell? I slammed the hood down, frustrated, and glanced at the tower. It felt closer somehow, but that had to be the fog messing with me. I decided to hike up there anyway. Might as well, since I was stuck. I grabbed my flashlight and harmonica, stuffed them in my jacket, and started walking. The path was slick with mud, and I nearly ate it twice, cussing myself for not bringing better boots. The falls roared louder as I got closer, but the fog muffled everything else. Halfway up, I heard this weird buzz, like a swarm of bees, but deeper. I stopped, spinning around, but the woods were empty. It faded fast, leaving me edgy. I kept going, telling myself it was just park noise, wind, maybe a generator. Still, it stuck with me, like a bad taste I couldn't shake. The tower loomed up, rusted and creaky, with a ladder bolted to one side. I tested the first rung, shaky, but it held. I climbed, slow and careful, the metal groaning under me. At the top, the view was unreal. Fog rolling over the valley, falls crashing below. The platform was bare except for some graffiti scratched into the rail. Watch the lights. I snorted. Cryptic much? But it reminded me of that glow last night. I pulled out the harmonica, played a few bars of Free Fallon, and let the notes drift. The buzz came back, louder, vibrating through the tower. I cut off mid-tune, gripping the rail. It stopped, but now I was jumpy. Something wasn't right. Back at the Subaru, the engine still wouldn't turn over. I kicked a tire, weighing my options. I could hike out to the main road, miles away, or wait it out, hope it was a fluke. I picked waiting, too lazy to hoof it yet. The fog thinned by noon, but the woods stayed quiet, too quiet, like everything was holding its breath. I messed around camp, carving a stick with my pocket knife to kill time. The tower kept pulling my eye though. That buzz, the graffiti, it was nagging at me. I caught myself humming, then stopped. Didn't want that sound coming back. The day dragged, and I couldn't shake this creeping feeling, like I'd stepped into something I didn't understand. By afternoon, I tried the car again, still dead. I leaned against it, staring at the tower, and saw it. A quick flash, same as last night, up top. My gut twisted. Not a hiker, not a trick of the light. Something disturbing was going on, and I was parked right under it, clueless and stranded. Night crashed in fast, and I was still stuck, the Subaru a useless hunk of metal. I'd rigged the tarp tighter, figuring I'd ride out the night, when this sharp crack split the air like a tree snapping in half. I jolted upright, flashlight in hand, and swept the beam around. Nothing but trees swaying in the wind. My pulse was already racing, though. Then the buzz hit again, loud and throbbing, shaking the ground under me. I climbed onto the Subaru's roof, scanning the dark, and saw it. Lights flickering at the tower's top, erratic, like a busted strobe. Not one glow, but dozens darting around. I muttered, "What the hell?" but my voice sounded thin, swallowed by the buzzing. I slid back into the car, locking the doors, and watched. The lights didn't stop, kept pulsing, spreading out like they were searching. Then I heard this low moan. Not wind, not an animal, something alive and pissed. It came from the woods, rolling closer, and I gripped the flashlight till my knuckles hurt. This was getting scary fast. The moan turned into words, mumbled, garbled, but words. I cracked the window, dumb move, and caught a piece. "Stay watch." My skin prickled. I slammed it shut, heart hammering, and the lights flared brighter. Shapes moved up there, tall, hunched, pacing the platform. Too far to see clear, but they weren't human, not with how they jerked around. Something hit the Subaru, hard, rocking it on its springs. I yelped, swinging the flashlight, and caught a shadow darting past the window. Big, fast, gone before I could focus. The buzzing spiked, drilling into my skull, and the moaning got louder, circling now. I ducked low, whispering, "You're fine, Thane, just breathe." But I wasn't fine. This was horror level wrong. The tower lights dimmed, then flared again, and I saw M clearer, figures in ragged coats, arms too long, heads lolling like they weren't attached right. One turned, and I swear it had no eyes, just black pits staring down at me. My stomach flipped. The moaning shifted into a chant, steady and deep, and the Subaru shook again, something scraping the roof. I stayed down, flashlight off, praying they'd miss me. The scraping stopped, but the chanting didn't. It wove into the buzz, this messed up rhythm that made my head throb. I peeked up, and one was closer, halfway down the ladder, moving like a spider. Disturbing ain't strong enough for that sight. The car's radio flicked on, dead battery be damned, spitting static and a voice. "Leave, now." It cut out, and the chanting paused. I held my breath, waiting, and the figure froze on the ladder, head snapping toward me. My hands shook so bad I dropped the flashlight. No way they didn't know I was here now. Everything went quiet, too quiet, and I risked another look. The tower was dark again, figures gone, but the air felt heavy, like something was still out there, watching. I grabbed my harmonica, stupid comfort, and clutched it tight. Whatever this was, it was tied to that tower, and I'd parked myself smack in its crosshairs. I couldn't take it anymore. Those things, the buzzing, the chanting. It was a nightmare I had to outrun. I grabbed my flashlight and harmonica, kicked the Subaru's door open, and bolted. The woods were a black maze, branches slashing my face, but I didn't care. That moan started up again, close, and I pushed my legs till they screamed. The tower lights flared behind me, casting wild shadows, and I heard him, those lanky figures, crashing through the trees. Not quiet anymore. They were hunting. I zigzagged, aiming for the sound of Brandywine Falls, figuring the main trail might get me out. My flashlight bounced, catching glints of those eyeless faces gaining ground. I hit the fall's edge, water roaring below, and skidded to a stop, dead end. The drop was steep, maybe 60 feet, but I'd seen a ranger path on the map, switchbacks down the cliff. I spotted it, narrow, crumbling, and started down, rocks sliding under my boots. The buzzing was everywhere now, vibrating my bones, and I glanced back. 3 of them at the top, staring. Halfway down, the path buckled, loose dirt gave way, and I fell, tumbling into the brush. The flashlight flew, smashing somewhere below, and I landed hard, wind knocked out. The harmonica dug into my ribs, still in my pocket. I scrambled up, limping, as that chant echoed down. Low, relentless, closing in. I ran blind, hands out, till I hit a gravel road. Must have been the park entrance. Headlights flashed ahead, an old pickup rumbling my way. I waved, yelling help. It screeched to a stop, and I dove for the passenger door. The driver, some grizzled guy with a beard, barked, "Get in." I didn't argue. We peeled out, tires spitting dirt, and I twisted to look back. They were there, silhouettes on the road, not chasing, just watching. The buzzing faded as we sped off, and I slumped, gasping. What the hell were those? I croaked. The guy shot me a look, muttered, "You don't want to know," and kept driving. My leg throbbed, sprained, maybe worse. He dropped me at a gas station outside Peninsula, barely a word between us. I limped inside, bought a coffee with shaky hands, and sat there, replaying it. The Subaru was toast, but I was alive, barely. Those things hadn't followed, but I felt like they'd marked me. I needed to get home, fast. The clerk lent me a phone. Mine was back in the car, and I called Leo. "Pick me up, man. I'm done." He didn't ask questions, just said he'd be there in 3 hours. I waited, sipping coffee, jumping at every noise. That tower was their turf, and I'd escaped by dumb luck in a stranger's truck. I kept the harmonica in my hand, thumbing it like a lifeline. The falls, the tower, those eyeless freaks. It was all too real, too scary. I'd gotten away, but my gut said it wasn't over. They'd seen me, knew me now. I just hoped distance would be enough to shake him. Leo rolled up around 2 a.m., headlights cutting through the dark. I hobbled to his car, legs stiff, and collapsed in the seat. "You look like hell," he said, half laughing. I didn't laugh back, just told him to drive. Buffalo never sounded so good, but I couldn't shake this itch to go back, grab my stuff, figure out what I'd seen. Dumbest idea yet. We were halfway home. 90 humming under us, when I talked myself into it. "Turn around," I said. Leo stared at me like I'd lost it. "My car's there, my gear. I can't just leave it." He argued, called me a moron, but I wouldn't budge. Reluctantly, he swung back toward Cuyahoga, grumbling the whole way. We hit the park at dawn, sky bruising purple. The Subaru sat where I'd left it, tarp flapping, untouched. I told Leo to wait, grabbed his spare flashlight, and limped over. The woods were silent. No buzz, no moans. I tossed my stuff in his trunk fast, ignoring the ache in my leg, thinking I'd dodged the bullet. Then I heard it. My harmonica, playing Free Fallon, faint but clear. I froze. It was in my pocket. How? I pulled it out, hands shaking, and the sound kept going, drifting from the tower. Leo yelled, "Thane, let's go," but I couldn't move. The lights flickered up there, slow and taunting. They came fast, those figures, spilling from the trees, eyeless faces locked on me. Leo honked, screaming, "Get in." I snapped out of it, ran, but my leg buckled. One grabbed me, cold and bony, yanking me back. I swung the flashlight, cracked its arm, but another tackled me, pinning me down. The chant started, deep, final. Leo gunned it toward me, tires squealing, but they dragged me into the woods before he could reach. I kicked, clawed, screamed his name. Useless. The harmonica tune looped, mocking me, as the tower loomed closer. My mistake was coming back. Greed, curiosity, whatever you call it. I'd escaped once, but not twice. They hauled me up the ladder, hands like iron, and I saw it. Dozens of them, crowded on the platform, coats flapping. No eyes, just hunger. The chanting swallowed me, and I felt the drop coming. Brandywine Falls roaring below. They didn't kill me quick. They tossed me, let the rocks finish it. Last thing was Leo's headlights fading as I fell. My car's still there, I bet, rusting by that oak. Leo probably told the cops some wild story. They won't find me, though. Cuyahoga's theirs. That tower's their throne. If you hear a harmonica out there, don't play along, run. I didn't, and it's my tragedy now. Buffalo's safe, but I'm not there. I'm a ghost story for hikers, a warning nobody'll believe. Should have listened to Leo, to my gut, but I didn't. Those things don't forgive second chances, and I gave him mine on a silver platter. I'm Soren Tate, 29 years old, and I live in Rochester, New York. Last weekend, I hit a breaking point. My office job's been sucking the life out of me, and I needed to breathe. So, I loaded up my '05 Toyota Tacoma and headed south to Mohican State Park in Ohio. It's a few hours drive, all dense woods and rivers, and I planned to sleep in the truck bed under a tarp. Roughing it, you know? I packed light, sleeping bag, cooler with burgers and water, a flashlight, and my sketchbook. I'm no artist, but doodling keeps me sane. My sister, Elise, texted me to be careful, said parks can get spooky, but I brushed it off. Mohicans got this rep for being chill, with rangers patrolling to keep things safe. I was banking on that. The drive down was pure freedom. I cranked some Neil Young, windows down, watching the trees thicken as I crossed into Ohio. By dusk, I pulled into Mohican, tires crunching on a back road near the Clear Fork River. I found a spot, quiet, tucked away, with a ranger outpost maybe a half-mile off, lights glowing faintly through the pines. I hopped out, the air cool and sharp, smelling like wet leaves. The Tacoma's bed was my home base. I tossed the sleeping bag in, strung the tarp tight, and cracked a water bottle. The river gurgled nearby, steady and calming. I'd scoped this place online. Rangers were supposed to check campsites, so I felt solid parking here. First night, I kept it low-key. I grilled a burger on a little propane stove, the sizzle cutting through the stillness. The outpost lights flickered in the distance, and I figured I'd say hi tomorrow, maybe ask about trails. For now, I just soaked it in, sketching the riverbank by flashlight, feeling the stress melt away. Darkness dropped fast, turning the woods into this deep, endless black. I climbed into the truck bed, locked the cab just in case, and left the tailgate cracked for air. Crickets chirped, an owl called, standard forest stuff. I sketched a quick ranger hat in my book, smirking at how cliché it looked, then set it aside. I was half asleep when I heard this thud, like something heavy landing nearby. I sat up, flashlight on, and scanned the trees. Nothing. Probably a deer, right? I laughed it off, but my heart was thumping a little too hard. The outpost lights were still on, steady as ever, so I figured I was good. Sleep tugged at me again, but that thud stuck in my head. I kept picturing a ranger tromping around, checking on me, except it didn't feel friendly. Mohican was gorgeous, sure, but there was this vibe, like the woods were sizing me up. I shook it off, city paranoia, nothing more. Lying there, I grinned at the stars peeking through the tarp. I'd made it out, ditched the grind for a bit. The rangers were close, the river was singing, and I was golden. Least, that's what I told myself. Didn't know yet that those woods, and whoever was watching, had other plans. Morning crept in slow, gray light seeping through the tarp. I woke up stiff, the truck bed digging into my spine, and climbed out, yawning. The river was still flowing, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. I grabbed a burger from the cooler, cold, but it'd do, and chewed while eyeballing the Tacoma. Something felt wrong. The truck wouldn't start. I turned the key, dead silence, not even a sputter. I popped the hood, swearing under my breath, but the battery cables were tight, oil fine. I'm no gearhead, but this made no sense. It had run perfect yesterday. I slammed the hood, glancing at the ranger outpost. Maybe they'd have jumper cables. I figured I'd hike over there. Half a mile, no big deal. I grabbed my flashlight and sketchbook, tucked them in my jacket, and started along the riverbank. The path was muddy, boots sinking in, and I kept slipping, annoying as hell. The outpost loomed ahead, but its lights were off now, even in the gloom. Weird for morning. About halfway, I heard this rustle, sharp, like something big moving fast. I froze, scanning the trees, but it was just branches swaying. Then this smell hit me. Rotten, like roadkill, faint but nasty. I gagged, chalking it up to a dead raccoon, but it left me twitchy. The woods weren't feeling so friendly anymore. The outpost was a bust. Door locked, windows dark, no truck out front. I knocked hard, nothing. Peering in, I saw a desk, some maps, a radio, all dusty like nobody'd been there in days. My gut twisted. Rangers don't just vanish, right? I sketched the empty porch quick, hands shaky, and decided to head back. On the walk, that rustle came again, closer, deliberate. I swung the flashlight, even though it was daylight, and caught a shadow darting between pines. Too big for a deer, too quiet. "Hello," I called, voice cracking. No answer, just that smell creeping back, stronger. This was getting disturbing. Back at the Tacoma, I tried the engine again, still nada. I kicked the tire, pissed, and weighed my options. Hike out to the main road, hours away, or sit tight, hope a ranger swung by. I picked sitting, lazy, sure, but I wasn't ready to ditch my stuff. The river kept gurgling, but it sounded off, slower somehow. I messed around camp, sketching the trees to calm down. The outpost kept bugging me. Empty, silent, like a ghost town. Then I noticed it, tire tracks near my truck, fresh, but not mine. Someone been here, and I hadn't heard a thing. My sketchbook slipped, and I cursed. Something was watching. I could feel it. By afternoon, the sky darkened, clouds rolling in. I tried the truck one last time, dead. That smell wafted by again, and I caught a glimpse of something. Boots, maybe, near the river before it vanished. My heart thudded. Rangers or not, this place was turning creepy, and I was stuck smack in the middle. Night hit like a brick, the woods turning pitch black around the Tacoma. I was hunched in the truck bed, flashlight flickering. Batteries were dying, just my luck. That smell was back, thick and rancid, clogging the air. I'd locked the cab, tarp pulled tight, but it didn't feel safe. Not after those tracks and that shadow by the river. Then I heard it. A laugh, low and wet, cutting through the dark. I bolted upright, shining the weak beam around. Nothing. The river was dead quiet now. No gurgle, just that laugh echoing from somewhere close. My hands shook. Rangers don't laugh like that, not out here. This was something else, something scary. The laugh stopped, and this heavy thud landed, like boots, but too loud, too deliberate. I swung the light toward the sound, and it caught him. Two figures by the trees, tall and still, in ranger uniforms. My stomach dropped. They didn't move, just stood there, heads tilted wrong, like puppets with cut strings. Horror doesn't even cover it. I yelled, "Hey, you guys okay?" No answer, just that smell rolling off them. Worse now. Then one stepped forward, slow, jerky, and the flashlight caught its face. Gray, sunken, eyes milky white. Not alive, not human anymore. I choked, scrambling back, and the other one laughed again, louder, rattling my skull. The tarp ripped. Something slashed it from above, claws or knives, I couldn't tell. I dove for the cab, fumbling the lock, and got inside as the truck rocked. Glass cracked, the passenger window spiderwebbed, and I saw it. A hand, gnarled and gray, smearing filth on the pane. My sketchbook fell, pages flapping, and I screamed, "Leave me alone!" They circled, thuds pacing the truck, and that laugh kept going, joined by a second voice now, raspy and cruel. I hit the horn, stupid, but I was panicking, and it blared, cutting through the night. The figures froze, heads snapping up, then backed off, melting into the trees. My chest heaved. Did I scare him? Silence settled, but it wasn't relief. The flashlight died completely, leaving me blind, and the smell lingered, seeping through the cracks. I grabbed my sketchbook, clutching it like a shield, and peeked out. The outpost lights flickered on, first time all day, then off again, like a signal. Something was seriously wrong here. I stayed put, doors locked, barely breathing. Those weren't rangers, not anymore. My mind raced, stories I'd heard, hikers gone missing in Mohican, brushed off as accidents. This was no accident. The truck felt like a trap now, and those things knew I was here, waiting me out. The river started up again, faint and sluggish, but it didn't calm me. I kept seeing those milky eyes, hearing that laugh, disturbing as hell. Whatever they were, they owned this place, and I'd rolled right into their game. The outpost, the tracks, the smell, it was all connected, and I was too deep to see the way out. I couldn't stay in that truck. It was a coffin waiting to happen. Those things were out there, and I wasn't waiting for him to bust in. I grabbed my sketchbook and dead flashlight, kicked the cab door open, and ran. The woods were a black void, that rotten smell choking me, but I bolted toward the river. Only way I knew. The laugh kicked up again, close and sharp, and I heard him, thuds crashing behind me, fast. My boots slipped in the mud, and I fell, sketchbook flying, but I scrambled up, lungs burning. The river loomed ahead, dark and slow, and I splashed in, knee-deep, aiming for the other side. Something splashed back, big, heavy, gaining. I hit the far bank, clawing up, and risked a look. Two of them, those gray-faced rangers, waiting after me, milky eyes glinting. My heart slammed, pure terror, and I ran blind, trees clawing my arms. The outpost lights flickered in the distance, and I veered toward him, praying for help, even if it was a long shot. The ground dipped. I stumbled into a ditch, twisting my ankle, and they were on me. One grabbed my jacket, yanking me back, and I swung, fist connecting with something soft and cold. It hissed, letting go, and I crawled out, limping hard. The laughs turned to snarls, angry now, and I pushed through the pain. I hit the outpost clearing, door still locked, but the ranger truck was there, keys dangling in the ignition. I dove in, slammed the door, and turned the key. It roared to life, thank God, and I floored it, tires spinning mud. The rear view showed M3 now, lurching out of the trees, arms swinging like broken dolls. They didn't chase far, just stood there, watching as I peeled down the road. The smell faded, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The truck rattled, old and beat up, but it was my lifeline. I kept going, headlights cutting the dark, till the river was a memory. I'd escaped, barely, but my ankle throbbed, and I was a mess. I found a paved road, signs pointing to Loudonville, and didn't slow down. The radio crackled, static, then a voice. Gone, stay out. It died fast, leaving me gripping the wheel tighter. Those things weren't random. They were rangers, or what was left of M, and Mohican was their haunt. I'd gotten lucky, stealing their ride. I pulled into town, panting, and parked at a diner, lights still on. My sketchbook was gone, lost in the ditch, but I was alive. I limped inside, ordered coffee, and sat there, staring at my hands. Mud, blood, scratches. The waitress raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask. Good. I had no answers anyway. The truck sat outside, keys still in it. I'd ditch it soon. Couldn't keep it, not after that. I'd escaped the horror show, but it didn't feel like a win. Those milky eyes stuck with me, like they'd follow me home. I needed to get back to Rochester, far from Mohican, and pray they didn't care enough to track me. I sipped that coffee till dawn, diner buzzing with early risers. My ankle was swollen, jacket torn. I looked like I'd lost a fight with a bear. I should have called Elise, hitched a ride home, but I'm stubborn as hell. My stuff, sleeping bag, cooler, was still in the Tacoma, and I couldn't let it go. Biggest mistake of my life. I drove the Ranger truck back to Mohican, sun climbing, figuring daylight would keep him away. The woods looked normal, birds chirping, river flowing, but my gut screamed to turn around. I ignored it, pulled up to my campsite, and there it was, the Tacoma, tarp shredded, cab door ajar. I stepped out, hobbling, and started grabbing what I could. That laugh hit, soft at first, then loud, right behind me. I spun, and there they were, two of them, standing by the river, gray faces grinning, teeth jagged. My blood went cold. I dropped the cooler, snatched a tire iron from the truck bed, and backed toward the Ranger truck, yelling, "Stay back." They didn't. One lurched forward, fast, and I swung, cracked its arm, but it kept coming, clawing my shoulder. I stumbled, pain flaring, and the other circled, laughing that wet, awful sound. The tire iron slipped, and I ran for the truck, ankle giving out halfway. They grabbed me, cold, slimy hands, and dragged me down. I fought, kicking, punching, but they were too strong. The riverbank rushed up. I was going to drown, I thought, but they didn't stop there. They hauled me into the woods, deeper, toward the outpost. My screams echoed, useless, as that smell choked me again. I'd escaped once. Coming back was my tragedy. They pinned me at the outpost door, one slamming it open. Inside, more of M5, 6, crowded the room, milky eyes locked on me. The radio hissed, looping. Stay out, too late now. They didn't talk, just laughed, dragging me to a trapdoor I hadn't seen before. It creaked open, dark and stinking. I clawed at the floor, splinters, blood, but they shoved me in. I fell, hitting dirt hard, and the door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed me, laughs fading above. I fumbled, found a wall, damp, slimy, and realized it wasn't a pit. It was a tunnel, stretching somewhere under Mohican. My ankle screamed, shoulder bled. I was trapped. They didn't kill me quick, left me down there, lost, with that smell and their echoes. The Tacoma's still out there, I bet, a tombstone for my dumbass choice. If you're in Mohican and see a Ranger truck, don't trust it, don't trust them. I did, and it cost me everything. Rochester's a dream now. I'm not making it back. Elise'll never know why, and that's the worst part. Those things, whatever they are, own this park, and I gave them exactly what they wanted. Me, too stubborn to run when I had the chance. I'm Lisa Brennan, 31 years old, and I live in Syracuse, New York. Last month, I hit a wall. My gig at the library's been a snooze, and I needed out. So, I dusted off my own '09 Chevy Blazer and pointed it towards Zaleski State Forest in Ohio. It's a few hours south, all thick woods and hills, and I figured sleeping in the Blazer'd be my ticket to some quiet. I packed the essentials: sleeping bag, a cooler with snacks and soda, a lantern, and my beat-up Polaroid camera. I've always loved snapping pics, you know. My coworker, Jude, said I was nuts going alone, but I waved him off. Zaleski's got this lookout tower I'd seen online. Old, kinda eerie, perfect for photos. That's where I was headed. The drive was a dream. Fall leaves blazing, air crisp through the windows. I blasted some Fleet Foxes, letting the miles peel away the stress. By late afternoon, I rolled into Zaleski, tires crunching on a dirt track near the tower. It jutted up through the pines, tall, rusted, like it had been forgotten. I parked a stone's throw away, under some oaks, and hopped out. The forest smelled like damp earth and resin, and it was dead quiet. No cars, no people. I popped the Blazer's hatch, tossed my sleeping bag in, and hung the lantern. The tower loomed nearby, dark against the fading light, begging for a shot. First night, I kept it simple. I munched on a granola bar, sipped a soda, and leaned against the Blazer, snapping a Polaroid of the tower at dusk. The pic came out moody, shadows stretching long. I'd climb it tomorrow, maybe get some aerial shots. For now, I just soaked in the stillness. Darkness fell fast, blanketing the woods. I climbed into the Blazer, locked the doors, old habit, and cracked a window. Crickets hummed, wind rustled the leaves, standard stuff. I fiddled with the camera, flipping through old pics, and grinned. This was it. Me, the forest, no deadlines. I was dozing off when I heard this snap, like a twig breaking clean. I sat up, lantern on, and peered out. Nothing but trees in the glow. Probably a squirrel, right? I chuckled, but my pulse ticked up. The tower caught my eye, silhouetted, still, but it felt off, like it was leaning closer. Sleep didn't come easy after that. I kept picturing that snap, wondering if I'd locked the hatch tight. The lantern cast weird shadows, and I told myself it was just nerves, city girl in the wild. Zaleski was stunning, sure, but there was this edge to it I couldn't shake. Lying there, I hugged the camera, smiling at the getaway. Syracuse felt a million miles away, and I'd earned this. The tower was my muse, waiting for me to capture it. Didn't know, yet it was watching back. Didn't know what kind of horror I'd snapped my way into. Morning crept in gray and foggy, the Blazer's windows streaked with dew. I woke up achy, neck stiff from the weird angle, and climbed out, rubbing my eyes. The forest was hushed, fog swallowing the tower, till it was just a faint spike. I grabbed a soda from the cooler, breakfast, sue me, and took a Polaroid of the haze. It came out blurry, kinda eerie. The Blazer wouldn't start. I turned the key. Nothing, not a cough. I cursed, popping the hood, but it all looked fine to me. Batteries newish, no loose wires. I slammed it shut, annoyed, and glanced at the tower. The fog made it look taller, closer, though that had to be my head playing tricks. I decided to hike up there. Why not? I'd come for pics, and the Blazer wasn't going anywhere. I grabbed my camera and lantern, stuffed them in my bag, and started walking. The ground was slick, roots tripping me up, and I nearly dropped the Polaroid twice. Clumsy as hell. The fog thickened, muffling everything. Halfway there, this hum started. Low, like a fridge kicking on, but out here? I stopped, peering through the mist, and it faded. Probably a plane, I told myself, but it left me edgy. I kept going, snapping a quick shot of the path. Came out dark, like the fog was eating the light. Weird vibe. The tower loomed up, rusty and damp, ladder glistening with dew. I tested a rung, creaky but solid, and climbed. The fog hid the view, but the platform was cool. Old planks, some graffiti scratched in, "Don't look down." I snorted, cute. I took a Polaroid from up top, but it came out black, just static. Back at the Blazer, the engine was still dead. I kicked a tire, frustrated, and weighed my options. Hike out to the road, miles off, or wait, hope it'd fix itself. I picked waiting, too attached to my stuff to bail. The hum came back, louder, and I caught myself scanning the trees, nothing but fog. I messed around camp, snapping pics to kill time. A leaf, the Blazer's hood. One came out with this weird streak, like something moved fast behind it. I squinted at it, heart ticking up. Trick of the light, right? But that hum kept pulsing, and the fog didn't lift. It felt wrong, heavy. By noon, I tried the blazer again, zilch. I sat on the tailgate, flipping through Polaroids, and noticed the tower in every shot, even ones I hadn't aimed at it. My stomach twisted, disturbing little glitch. Then I heard it. A snap, sharp, like that first night, from the woods. I grabbed the lantern, scanning the fog, and saw a flicker. Quick, like a light switching off. Not the tower, closer. I called out, "Anyone there?" Dumb, but I was jumpy. No answer, just that hum growing, vibrating the ground. Something creepy was brewing, and I was stuck right in its shadow. Night slammed down, fog still choking the woods around the blazer. I was inside, lantern dimming, flipping through Polaroids when that hum spiked, loud, rattling my teeth. I dropped the pics, heart pounding, and grabbed the lantern. Then I heard it, a voice, raspy, whispering, "Stay," right outside the window. My blood froze. I flicked the light up, peering out, and saw shapes in the fog, tall and thin, circling slow. Not people. Too jerky, too wrong. The hum turned into a drone, and the blazer shook, like something brushed it. I locked the doors again, muttering, "You're fine, Lisa," but I wasn't. This was scary as hell. One step closer, fog parting, and I saw it. Ragged coat, arms dangling too long, face just blank, like a smudged photo. It tapped the glass. Tap, 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 and I yelped, dropping the lantern. The light cut out, and that whisper came again, "Stay, watch." Overlapping now, more voices joining in. I grabbed my camera, hands shaking, and snapped a shot through the window. Flash lit up the blank face, pressed to the glass. The Polaroid spit out, and I watched it develop. Nothing but black, then streaks, like it burned out. The tapping spread, roof, doors, and the drone got louder, drilling into my skull. I slid low, hugging the seat, as the blazer rocked harder. Something scraped the hood, long, slow, deliberate, and I peeked up. 3 of them now, blank faces staring, fog swirling around him. My throat tightened. Horror doesn't touch this. The tower lights flickered on, way up, like a beacon calling him. The whispers turned into a chant, low, rhythmic, no words I knew. I fumbled for the keys, praying the blazer'd start. Nothing, still dead. A window cracked, splintering under a bony fist, and I screamed, "Get away!" They didn't flinch, just kept chanting, tapping, closing in. This wasn't random, it was planned. I stayed down, barely breathing, as the scraping circled. The tower lights pulsed, and I caught a glimpse. More shapes up there, moving fast. My mind raced. Those pics, the hum, the tower, it was all tied together, some disturbing trap I'd rolled into. The blazer wasn't safe anymore. The chanting stopped, sudden and sharp, and I risked a look. Gone, fog empty again. But the hum lingered, and the tower glowed, steady now. I clutched the camera, heart hammering. Whatever they were, they knew I was here, knew I'd seen him. The night felt alive, watching me. I couldn't move, paralyzed, waiting for the next tap. The Polaroids were scattered, all black or streaked, like they'd erased the world. Something was seriously wrong in Zaleski, and I was smack in the middle, alone with a dead truck and a camera that had caught too much. I had to get out. Those blank-faced things weren't waiting for me to grow a spine. I grabbed the camera and lantern, dead but heavy, and bolted from the blazer. Fog swallowed me, cold and thick, and I ran blind, tripping over roots, aiming for anywhere but here. The chant kicked up again, faint but chasing. Something grabbed my ankle. I fell hard, camera skidding, and twisted free, kicking at air. The hum roared, ground shaking, and I saw long arms reaching through the mist. I scrambled up, lungs burning, and sprinted toward the tower. Dumb, maybe, but it was the only landmark I had. I hit the base, ladder slick with fog, and climbed, rungs groaning, hands slipping. The chant grew louder, below me now, and I looked down. Big mistake. 5 of them, blank faces upturned, climbing after me, jerky and fast. My stomach flipped, pure terror, and I pushed higher, legs screaming. The platform was a mess, planks rotting, graffiti glowing in the tower's light. I slammed the trapdoor shut, no lock, and shoved the lantern against it. Thuds hit, bang, bang, like they were testing it. I backed to the rail, gasping, and saw the blazer below, surrounded by more of them, tearing at it. The trapdoor buckled. One got through, clawing up, and I swung the camera, cracking its arm. It hissed, falling back, but another took its place. I yelled, "Leave me alone!" Useless, and kicked the lantern at it. The drone spiked, deafening, and the tower swayed, old bolts creaking. I scanned for an out, nothing but a 50-foot drop. The blazer's lights flickered on, impossible, battery dead, and I saw a dirt road beyond it. I had to jump, risk it. The trapdoor splintered, and I leapt, aiming for a bush, hit hard, rolling, pain exploding in my ribs. They shrieked, loud and pissed. I ran, limping, toward the road. Headlights flashed, a truck roaring my way. I waved, screaming, "Help!" It stopped, an old guy, hunter maybe, yelling, "Get in!" I dove in, door slamming, and he peeled out, tires spinning. The tower lights flared, shapes pouring down the ladder. We sped off, fog thinning, and I twisted back, dozens of them at the road's edge, still, watching. The hum faded, and I slumped, shaking. "What were those?" I croaked. He grunted, "Don't ask," and kept driving. My ribs ached, blood trickling from a cut. Alive, but barely. He dropped me at a gas station in MacArthur, silent the whole ride. I stumbled in, bought a water, and sat, replaying it. Those faces, the tower, my escape. The blazer was gone, but I'd made it out. Whatever they were, they owned Zaleski, and I'd slipped their grip, for now. I sat in that gas station till morning, nursing water, ribs throbbing. The clerk eyed my torn jacket but didn't pry. I looked like hell, and I knew it. I should have called Jude, gotten a ride back to Syracuse, but I'm a stubborn ass. My camera was back there, my pics, couldn't leave him. Worst call I ever made. I hitched a ride with a trucker heading near Zaleski, sun up, figuring daylight'd keep him quiet. He dropped me a mile out, and I hiked in, ribs screaming, fog gone but the woods too still. The blazer sat there, hatch open, Polaroid scattered. I started grabbing him, quick, ignoring the prickling on my neck. That hum started, soft, then loud, vibrating the dirt. I froze, pics slipping, and saw him, two blank faces at the tree line, coats flapping. My gut sank. I bolted for the blazer, ribs be damned, and tried the key. Miracle, it started. I floored it, tires spinning, but they moved, fast, cutting me off. One slammed the hood, blank face inches from the windshield, and I swerved, crunched a tree, airbag popping. Glass shattered, and they yanked the door open. I swung, fist hitting nothing solid, and they grabbed me, cold and strong. The hum turned to whispers, "Stay watch." Final, like a sentence. I kicked, screamed, but they dragged me out, toward the tower. The pics fluttered, black, streaked, burning in my head. My ribs cracked more, pain blinding, and I saw it. Dozens up there, blank faces waiting. Coming back was my tragedy. Greed got me, not sense. They hauled me up the ladder, hands like ice, and the platform was packed, silent, staring. The whispers stopped, and one pushed me to the edge, 50 feet down, no bush this time. I clawed at M, begging, but they shoved, air rushed, then nothing. The tower claimed me, end of the line. The blazer's still there, I bet, a wreck with my pics, proof nobody'll see. Zaleski's theirs, those things, whatever they are, guard that tower. If you hear a hum, see a flicker, don't stop, don't snap a shot. I did, and it's why I'm gone. Syracuse is a memory, Jude'll wonder, but he won't know. I escaped once, had my chance, but I blew it chasing what I'd lost. They don't let go twice, and that fall was my last frame, blank, black, done. I'm a cautionary tale now, lost in Ohio's woods. Don't trust the quiet, the towers. Don't trust yourself to outrun him. I didn't, and it's the last mistake I'll ever make.